Imagine this, a massive empire of oil and gas, built over decades, suddenly crumbling under relentless blows from a force it never saw coming.
Could Ukraine really cut Russia's fuel lifeline, leaving Putin scrambling? That's the unthinkable reality unfolding right now.
In the early days of Russia's invasion in February 2022, the nation believed its mainland was untouchable, and for a while, it was safe.
Ukraine lacked the arms to reach deep into enemy territory.
Western long-range weapons came later, but with strict limits on use that shackled their potential. Picture the cold, eerie silence of empty skies, as Ukraine's fighters waited, the metallic tang of anticipation in the air, while Russia's borders hummed with unchallenged power. Fast forward, and everything has flipped. Ukraine transforms into a formidable long-range threat, its claws sinking into Russia's vital oil refineries. These sites, hidden within Russian soil, process raw crude into fuel like gasoline and diesel, untouchable, or so it seemed. Yet, Ukraine shatters that myth, crippling a fuel giant's reserves.
Russia's recovery?
Years away, as the scars of Putin's war deepen. Smell the acrid smoke of burning refineries, feel the ground tremble under explosion after explosion. Building on this dramatic shift, where Ukraine rose as an unstoppable long-range beast, the assault on Russia's refineries began in earnest since 2024. Facilities once beyond reach now burn. Earlier hits were pinpoint but reparable, allowing Russia quick fixes with minimal lasting harm.
That changed too. Enter August 2025, and Ukraine evolves.
Still targeting as many as possible, but now relentlessly.
One refinery struck? Hit again, and again.
Huddled in darkness, Russian engineers sweat over consoles, the beep of alarms piercing the night, as cumulative damage keeps sites down for weeks, crushing the second half of 2025.
Ears ring from distant booms, skin prickles with urgent tension.
Drawing from the escalating pattern of repeated strikes crippling multiple sites, Ukraine achieves a shattering milestone, half of Russia's refining power down.
Per Euromaidan Press on October 21, long-range drones and missiles slam into about half the refineries, silencing them. Products can't move, exports halt. Why stop at 50%?
The other half lies too far for drones, or runs at low capacity, off the priority list.
Russia retains undamaged ones, but distance is the killer. Fuel journeys stretch far to battlefronts, straining supply chains, the crunch of gravel under heavy transport trucks echoing futility. Pulling from the geographical nightmare leaving Russia reliant on remote refineries, Putin's war engine sputters without quick fuel. Strikes magnify domestic woes and cut into export profits from priced oil. Sanctions hinder repairs, starving Russia of parts.
Euromaidan Press reveals the grim truth: components diverted to hit sites neglect far-off ones, degrading them indirectly. Ukraine exploits this, spreading strain.
When Russia repairs one, what happens? More hits erase progress, the cycle vicious. Hear the frenzied shouts of workers, smell welding fumes, as flames rage anew.
Continuing from the repair quagmire where Ukraine ensures broad refinery frailty, Russia's pressure builds. Strikes exceed their impact, sparking a collapse trifecta. Fuel shipments plunge to 2020 lows, COVID supply chain chaos mirrored by Ukraine's devastation. September exports dropped to 3.69 million barrels daily, a 26% tumble from last year's average. Rail cars sit idle, ships half full. Feel the chill of empty terminals, the metallic bite of abandoned equipment. Amid these sinking shipments, domestic impacts fester unseen. The 26% cut doesn't just hurt exports, it starves the home front, Putin hoarding for the fight. Workers clutch ration fuel, the hum of idle machinery a mournful dirge. Yet, the blow extends globally. Oil revenues crater, September's $13.35 billion, a hefty sum, but $200 million below August, continuing a sharp slide since July. Twist, revenue lowest since invasion. Imagine Putin's fury, the sting of dwindling coffers. As money dries up, tying directly to warfighting, the strategy shines. Fewer funds mean fewer troops, less gear. Struggling refineries starve assaults, the distant roar of uncoupled engines a betrayal. But woes mount. Maritime exports fall 17% in September, refineries forced to halt, stockpiling fuel at home. End of September bans extend on gasoline to late 2025, diesel partially barred. Ports hum nervously, see rusty ships waiting, the salty air heavy with neglect. Beyond refinery bans, Ukraine targets ports and loading spots, heightening risks. Insurance spikes. Premiums soar for shadowy fleets, undocumented vessels paying dearer to sail. Traders shift to inferior ships, delays mounting, each barrel's cost skyrocketing. The February $47.60 cap on Russian oil bites harder now. Friendly nations like China, India demand discounts. With rising freight, profits vanish. How low will Ukraine's next strike drive Russia? What if the humiliation deepens, leaving the empire on its knees, gasping for the very fuel it once hoarded? The air thickens with uncertainty, every pause a gamble. Could you imagine Vladimir Putin's smug smirk vanishing overnight, as his empire's black gold crumbles beneath relentless Ukrainian strikes? Picture the acrid smoke of burning refineries curling into the sky, the distant rumble of explosions shaking the ground like thunder, the stench of spilled fuel clinging to the air, a toxic fog that Russia can't escape. Yet, in this war of attrition, Ukraine's drones and missiles aren't just scars, they're scars that bleed Russia's economy dry. From the summary, Euromindan Press disclosed on October 21 that Ukraine has crippled around half of Russia's refineries, halting shipments and exposing internal chaos. Imagine a perfect storm where Ukraine obliterates the other half of those refineries, but alas, that's a fantasy not destined to unfold. Why? Remote ones dodge drone reach, others idle on purpose, sidelined intentionally. So, Russia clings to untarnished fuel plants in far-flung corners. But here's the brutal twist, that distance is a crippling flaw. Putin's war juggernaut demands fuel rushing to battlefronts swiftly. With nearby refineries decimated, what's left is a logistical nightmare. Petrol now trudges across endless roads, over jagged terrains that echo with the groan of heavy trucks. Feel the rough edges of oil-stained maps in officers' hands, the heat of engines straining under loads. On home soil, Russia's prized export lifeline phrase, and globally, their sales plummet. Layered onto this fuel calamity, Western sanctions twist the knife deeper. Repair parts are scarce specters, forcing Russia to cannibalize components from working sites. Visualize engineers, sweat-soaked and desperate, wrenching vital pieces away, leaving other plants to decay slowly. No hits needed, just rot from neglect. Ukraine exploits this cunningly, pressuring every refinery to its limits. And when Russia patches one back together with scavenged scraps, expect the sky to darken again. More drones swoop, more missiles thunder. Russia loops back to ruin. As flames dance in the night, and sparks fly from frantic repairs, a nation warps under crushing strain. The strike's ripples dwarf the blasts themselves. Enough to make you wonder, can Russia rebuild before its own people revolt? What if the next hit ignites a chain reaction no army could contain, turning black gold into ashes that choke the dream of dominance? As the air thickens with smoke, and the earth trembles from untold pressure, Putin's regime faces an invisible noose. Lives changed forever by unseen forces. Have you ever tasted victory so bitter, or defeat so sweet? What hidden fracture will shatter next? Stay tuned, as the war's cruelest weapon, denied fuel, unfolds in shadows. In a shocking turn, have you ever imagined a mighty nation crippled by relentless drones humming through the night skies, their explosions echoing like thunder, leaving the stench of burning oil hanging heavy in the air? Picture Vladimir Putin's Russia, once boasting unbreakable defenses, now scrambling as Ukraine's long-range weapons turn the tide, hitting half of its refineries, slashing fuel production, and sparking a crisis that could topple an empire. But what if I told you the war's not just about borders anymore? It's hitting Russian wallets and families, with gas stations rationing fuel and shortages spreading like wildfire? That's the unexpected twist. Ukraine's strikes aren't stopping at factories, they're targeting fuel reserves, depots bursting into flames, turning Russia's own stockpiles into powder kegs. As smoke rises and sirens wail, the question burns, will Putin survive the humiliation of his empire crumbling from within? As Ukrainian drones zeroed in, their propellers slicing through frigid winds, the acrid smoke from refinery fires choked the air, leaving a gritty residue on every surface.
Russia, thought immune to mainland threats in February 2022, underestimated Ukraine's growing arsenal. Where long-range weapons once faced strict limits, now they're unleashed, transforming Ukraine into a long-range monster.
Oil refineries, churning crude into gasoline and diesel, felt the impact deep. Isolated strikes were one thing, easily repaired, but since August 2025, Ukraine shifted tactics. Repeated hits on the same sites kept refineries offline, prolonging agony. By October, 50% of Russia's refining capacity lay in ruins, per Euromaidan press. Drones and missiles struck half the facilities, halting production entirely. The other half? Too distant for drones or already scaled back. Fuel shipments stretched across vast distances, straining supply lines. Western sanctions blocked repairs, forcing Russia to redirect parts from undamaged sites, weakening all defenses. Ukraine exploited this, staging follow-ups that erased gains. Engineers toiled tirelessly, the roar of generators and clank of tools a constant reminder of desperation. What's the humiliating irony? One strike erased months of work. How long until Russia's war machine sputters to a halt from this fuel famine? What happens when a titan like Russia faces fuel droughts at home, with pumps running dry and long lines snaking around stations? The heat of consumer fury builds, not just through reports, but through the palpable tension of empty tanks and skyrocketing prices. Russia's daily exports plunged to unseen lows since 2020, rivaling pandemic chaos, but now, it's warfare's fault. September saw exports drop 26%, railcars emptying into silence, ships loading less. Oil revenues tumbled to $13.35 billion, down over $200 million from August. The International Energy Agency blamed Ukraine's drones, cutting processing by 500,000 barrels daily. Fossil fuel earnings slid 4% monthly, 26% yearly. Maritime trade took a hit too, seaborne refined products down 17%. Bans on exports preserved domestic supplies, but ports faced risks, insurance spiking for shadow fleets. Price caps at $47.60 per barrel squeezed profits, with shipping costs soaring. Domestically, fuel shortages hit 57 regions nationwide, fueling queues, scares, and price hikes. Gas giants like Baikal and Kaz imposed restrictions, indefinite limits on purchases. Stockpiled fuel went up in smoke. This internal strife could pressure Putin, unseen since the invasion's start. The emotional arc deepens, not just economic ruin, but a nation's morale cracking under rising costs and vanishing resources. Will ordinary Russians rise against leaders squandering their livelihoods? Shifting focus feels like twisting a dagger deeper into an enemy's heart, from refineries to fuel depots, those hidden vaults where supplies await trains or ships. Ukraine's strategy evolved, clever and calculated, watching Russia's repairs with eagle eyes before striking again. Now, footage reveals soaring flames and shattered tanks, the ground vibrating under blasts. With air defenses stretched thin, Ukraine targets depots, destroying earmarked fuel for exports or frontline troops. This isn't random chaos, it's precision humiliation, leaving Putin with unusable reserves. Imagine the frustration, refinery strain, repairs futile, stocks ablaze. And the twist? This isn't just deprivation, it's sabotage amplifying domestic pain. How far will Ukraine push, with Russia gasping for air? Prepare for more crimson skies. Imagine this, the roar of flames engulfing Russia's precious fuel depots, the acrid smoke choking the night sky, and the bitter taste of desperation in Putin's crumbling empire. Ukraine isn't just attacking refineries now, it's obliterating stockpiled fuel meant for soldiers, sales, and the economy. What happens when a colossal power stumbles, victims to its own lifeline igniting in fury? We saw Ukraine cripple half of Russia's refineries, straining Putin's war machine with dwindling oil shipments and revenue plummeting by 26%. Exports nosedive, leaving vessels empty and coffers rattling. But now, the assault escalates. Ukraine targets fuel depots, those vast tanks dripping with liquid gold. Why save fuel if it burns? A single strike eradicates tons earmarked for overseas sales or domestic markets, amplifying the chaos Ukraine's refinery blows began. Depots in flames mean no quick replacements, thanks to refinery downtime. Russia's in a vice, production halted, product destroyed. Picture the ground trembling under repeated blasts, the heat-searing skin as workers flee plumes of black haze. Can Ukraine choke Russia's economy through these fiery sieges? That question hangs like smoke over a battlefield. Dig deeper, Zelensky's voice echoes truth in every Ukrainian hearth. Day after day, long-range drones and missiles thunder against Russian oil giants. Our strikes grow in range and precision, he declares. Does Putin feel the sting? Russia once sneered at Ukraine's reach, but now refineries shatter routinely, pulling Putin back to harsh reality. His invasion myths crumble under Ukrainian firepower. Imagine the shove, Ukraine now retaliates against every Russian long-range blow. Faster, fiercer strikes loom, as capabilities balloon. How long before Russia's oil empire fractures completely? A cliffhanger pulses with each depot's collapse. Zelensky aims high, to collapse Russia's fossil fuel dominion. October brings grim omens from the Atlantic Council, Putin's arsenal may sputter out of gas soon. IEA assessments whisper doom, refinery ravages suppress production until mid-2026. If Ukraine's tools sharpen as promised, that date mocks optimism. Sensory overload hits Russians hard, higher VAT bites, clawing from 20% to 22% on fuel and goods. Citizens grumble at rising costs, environments tightening like a noose. The tactile pain of inflated bills, the echo of sirens after strikes, does this herald rebellion? Twist looms, with depots ablaze, discontent spikes, eroding Putin's iron grip from within. In a shocking turn of events, Russia launched its invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, believing mainland threats were non-existent. Back then, Ukraine lacked the firepower to strike back effectively. Western long-range weapons changed everything, though restrictions slowed their use. Fast forward 3 years, and Ukraine has become a formidable force, targeting Russia's oil refineries with relentless precision. Strikes since 2024 have crippled refining capacity by 50%, as per Euromidden Press on October 21. Russia's fuel reserves burn, halting shipments and drying up revenues. Putin faces collapse, with echoes of 2020's oil lows haunting the economy. Will this monster strike cripple Russia beyond repair? Hit rewind to early 2022. The air hung heavy with diesel fumes, tankers roaring across icy tundras, their cold metal vibrating under soldiers' boots. Putin smirked in his Kremlin's oak-paneled room, scent of victory cigars swirling, as plans unfolded without fear of retaliation. Little did he know, this memory clashes with today's chaos. What if a single nation's strikes could starve a superpower of its lifeblood? Russia's refineries, once untouchable fortresses churning crude into gasoline, now crumble under Ukraine's assault. Since August 2025, strategy shifted to targets hit not once, but repeatedly. Engines grind to a halt, smoke choking the air, leaving experts to forecast suppression until mid-2026. Zelensky's warnings amplify risks. Russia's VAT hike from 20% to 22% stings civilians more, forcing cold queues for rations while budgets bleed. Do these blows humiliate Putin? Exposing his empire's fragility? Recall the refinery alarms blaring, steel twisting under impacts, the acrid stench of burning fuel lingering like defeat's bitter taste. In Putin's shadowy corridors, advisors whispered triumph. Now, paranoia grips as Ukraine's drones hum relentlessly. Can desperation force a tyrant into reckless fury? As refineries offline strain priorities, military fuel comes first, civilians last. Aviation sorties dwindle, offensives stagger, logistics drag. Kyiv insider warns, persist, and by 2026, Russia leans on crude exports, cheaper and capped at $47.60 per barrel since July's EU-UK limits. Shipping costs soar from port risks, insurers demand premiums, and China's discounts loom. Shadow fleet sailors fret over unreliable cover. Imagine traders scrambling for pricier, flimsier vessels. Every barrel's voyage now a gamble. Fuel shipments now mirror 2020 lows, down 26% to 3.69 million barrels daily, fortune slashed to $13.35 billion in September per Reuters. IEA credits Ukraine's drones for 500,000 barrels per day lost processing. Fossil revenues plummet 26% year over year, lowest since invasion.
Ukraine's maritime bans choke exports, refining halts cause 17% drops in seaborne products. Ports echo with delays, ships idling in fog-shrouded harbors, creaking lines fraying under tension. Insurers hike rates, forcing older tankers into jeopardy. How does Russia fend off bankruptcy's grip? Flashback to refinery towers glowing at dawn, oil's earthy musk mixing with workers' calloused grips on wrenches. Success seemed eternal. Now, gaps yawn, forcing rerouting of parts under sanctions. Degradation creeping like unseen cracks. Is collapse inevitable, dooming Russia for decades? Putin retaliates, intensifying Ukraine's energy strikes amid fading Tomahawk hopes. Civilians shiver without heat as infrastructure frays. Yet, irony bites, Ukraine's growing reach may extend suppression past mid-2026. Discontent festers, VAT hikes in flaming queues. Prioritization hits hard to troops fueled, people rationed. Operationally, everything slows. Assuming assaults continue, structural reliance on crude deepens, price caps biting deeper. Desperation mounts. But will Russia's own medicine backfire, accelerating its ruin? In this brutal standoff, one twist lurks, internal pressures mount, borders blur as pain echoes through darkened streets. What hidden betrayal awaits next? Can you imagine the icy grip of winter choking an entire nation? Ukraine's civilians bracing against bone-numbing cold, shivering in homes devoid of warmth, all because Russia's bombs tear through energy lines. Yet, in a shocking twist, Ukraine's unrelenting assault on Russia's refineries is draining Putin's coffers dry, exposing a fragile empire teetering on collapse. Imagine the roar of jets overhead, the acrid smoke billowing from crippled factories, the cold snap biting like 1,000 needles. Ukraine's civilians endure Russia's energy strikes, designed to plunge them into darkness and demand. But President Zelensky warns that pressure is essential to shatter this cycle of aggression. Just weeks back, the specter of Tomahawk cruise missiles loomed over Putin. He wavered, hinting at peacemakers' paths. Relief flickered briefly, and Russians retreated, twisting talks into delays. Who will crack first in this brutal standoff? Russia's blows crush Ukraine's power, harming innocents numbed to cruelty. Ukraine's refinery onslaughts? They siphon funds from Putin's war beast, starving it slowly. Could this shift end the slaughter sooner? As 2025 wanes, Ukraine's playbook shines fierce and bold. No more hunkering down, waiting for Russia's manpower or gold to ebb. Now, deep delves into enemy soil unleash chaos on their machine, accelerating doom. A fresh victory erupts, and missiles from Britain strike true. Russian shields crumple again. Ukraine deploys Storm Shadow, torching a prized asset. Putin's armory blazes, his generals humbled by defeat's sting. What hidden secret fuels this fall? Newsweek blasted the news on October 22. Ukrainian missiles and planes ravaged the Bryansk chemical plant the day prior, a linchpin for Russia's combat might. Strikes erupt amid dashed hopes, no tomahawks from America. Hours later, Trump's summit with Putin in Hungary dissolves. Ukraine ignites Storm Shadow fury. In this inferno of fuel and flame, Russia's refineries groan under repeated blows. Half shattered by Ukraine's reach, leaving half intact but distant. Engineers toil frantically, the stench of scorched earth clinging to sweat-soaked skin. Export drops slash revenues, forcing discounts in a shadowy oil game. Will Putin's realm ignite further fury? Or will Ukraine's grip tighten into victory's chokehold? Can Russia's mighty machine withstand such relentless siege? Stay tuned for the heart of crisis unfolding. Can you imagine the arrogance of an empire, once unbeatable, now scrambling as its secret weapons factories crumble under relentless drone fire? That's the reality unfolding in the shadows of war, where Ukraine's precision strikes peel back layers of Russia's invincibility, exposing vulnerabilities that bleed into every frontline clash. But what if one plant held the key to crippling Russia's missile arsenal, turning the tide in a single, explosive night? In our previous episode, we uncovered how the Bryansk chemical plant isn't just a mundane factory for Russia. It churns out essential rocket fuel components, powering the very missiles that rain terror on Ukrainian soil.
Ukraine's daring strike has gouged a deep wound in Russia's ability to build multiple launch rocket systems, from the Tornado and Grad to the remote mine-laying terror of the Zemlya Delia. This cutoff throttles production, forcing Russia to confront a shrinking arsenal just as its offensive ramps up. Now, fast forward to the heart of the action. Could Ukraine have timed this blow any better? Russia ramps up missile launches, their thuds echoing like ominous drumbeats across the land. Take the Grom-1 hybrid bomb missiles, as detailed by the new Voice of Ukraine. They fuse Russia's aerial bombs with Kh-38 missiles, stretching a deadly reach from about 6 to 125 miles. If these beasts flood mass production, they'll carve chaos into Ukraine's cities and fields. Ukraine starves Russia of rocket fuel, dialing down the fury of future assaults. Feel the burn? Smell the acrid fumes of disrupted production? That's the raw edge of weakening might. This stark truth turned the Bryansk chemical plant into prime prey. Western allies sensed the shift, too. On September 12, the Kyiv Independent reported Britain's fresh sanctions slamming Russia, targeting this very facility. The United States joins the pile-on with its own curbs. Proximity amplifies the agony. Reports from Uran Press reveal the plant sits a mere 77 6/10 miles from Ukraine's northern border. Supplies race to Russian troops faster than ever. But now? Missions shred that lifeline, leaving them stranded in a fog of delay. Ukraine's general staff echoes the strike's punch. Yet Robert Brovati, commander of Ukraine's unmanned systems forces, delves deeper on Telegram. He claims total destruction, not yet official from Ukraine, but insists this slams a crippling blow to Russia's combat edge. Imagine the screech of distant sirens as he calls it the largest frontline hub for heavy weapons restoration Russia wields today. He stresses the plant's role in reviving what? Amid the echoing booms and smoky haze, whispers of deeper secrets linger, promising even more upheavals that could unravel the invaders' plans. What hidden assets might surface next, in this war where one spark could ignite total collapse? Stay tuned as we dig deeper into the unraveling threads of power. The battlefield hums with tension, a bridge to untold revelations. Traders braced for Ukraine's attacks on ports and pipelines. Insurance costs skyrocketed, as uncertain shipping routes demanded higher premiums. Older vessels, veiled in secrecy, faced dwindling coverage. Armed with unreliable documentation, these shadow fleet tankers navigated treacherous waters. Sellers hunted for scarcer, pricier protection to shield every barrel. Eurosmid Press captured this chaos, where delays stretched loading times and jacked up costs per ounce of oil. Russia grappled with a $47.60 cap on crude exports to sanctioning nations, imposed in July by the UK and European Union. The shadow fleet's purpose? To dodge bans and funnel oil to non-sanctioned buyers like China and India. These giants now flex their bargains, pressing for cuts. Russia's sellers caved, offering discounts while shipments grew riskier and dearer. Amid insurance hurdles, eking out profits became a gamble. With Ukraine's drone shadows looming, every barrel's journey felt heavier, every deal teetered on the edge of ruin. This drenched Russia's earnings in red ink, sowing seeds of economic desperation. Legitimate buyers cut Russian retailers off, diverting to alternatives. The shadow fleet dominated, ferrying 70% of Russia's maritime crude, over 1 million barrels daily. Illegal schemes sprouted, blending sanctioned oil with smuggled Russian supplies. Traders blurred lines to skirt caps. Gone were the days of transparent shipments, subterfuge became the norm, inflating risks and eroding confidence. Ukraine's relentless campaign threatens to throttle Russia's lifeline. Exports dipped 16%, draining billions from war coffers. Factories grind slower without fuel, port snafus cascade into broader turmoil. Yet cracks appear in Ukraine's strategy. Russia's adapted defenses, tougher shields and cyber shields snuff some threats, preserving a sliver of flow. Will this resilience prolong the agony? As strikes intensify, we witness a war not just of troops, but of vital resources. Who will break first in this grinding siege? The answer hides in flaming silhouettes and echoing impacts, painting a volatile portrait of imperiled might. In our last moments, we uncovered how this devastating assault cripples Russia's frontline right now. It's hitting the core of their heavy weaponry production and supply right on the battlefield. The plant plays a crucial role in repairing all of Russia's multiple launch rocket systems, like the Tornado and the Grad. Plus, it's key for churning out the Smerch tanks. No, that's not right. It's essential for manufacturing Russia's ZRVMD system, a remote mine-laying launcher that spreads death and chaos. Expert Brovody ended with a chilling warning. We're battling step by step, day by day. The swarm of unmanned aerial vehicles, they're gaining speed. This hints at Ukraine's drones possibly aiding in the Bryansk chemical facility attack, though unconfirmed. If true, those drones served as decoys, tricking Russia's air defenses, creating safe paths for Storm Shadow missiles to approach unnoticed. It makes sense. Brovody's words point to unmanned systems in the strike. Or perhaps he's alluding to other unverified hits on Russian targets. The report from Euromaidan Press highlights power blackouts in several Russian areas on the same night as the plant blast. October 21, regions like Chepkov, north of Bryansk, saw the fallout. Images and videos show a blazing electrical substation, burning intensely, the acrid smell of smoke filling the air. Ukraine struck more than just the chemical site. Flames erupted in Smolensk too, about 167 miles from the border, within range of Storm Shadows and Ukraine's drone fleets. A thermal power plant ignited during a drone warning. The heat from the fires so intense, it seared the skin of onlookers. Ukraine was relentless that night. The Bryansk hit was the devastating uppercut. But they landed multiple punches on Russia's energy grid. At least, that's the assumption. Ukraine hasn't claimed these attacks yet. Imagine the thunderous booms echoing across the sky as artillery rains down on unsuspecting targets. The sharp crack of explosions, rattling windows and hearts alike. Is Ukraine turning the tables? Humiliating Russia's invincible walls? What if Russia's mighty chemical arsenal isn't so invincible after all? But here's the twist, could these strikes be part of a bigger game? One where Ukraine doesn't just damage. It dismantles the chains of command. Legally, technically, morally? The psychological toll mounts. Flames licking at Russia's pride. Each blackout starves their machines of power. The metallic tang of fear in the air, as refineries sputter and soldiers shiver in the dark. Can Russia rebuild fast enough? Or are these jabs the start of their collapse? Picture the tremors underfoot, from distant strikes shaking the land. What secrets lurk in Ukraine's next move? Will it expose Russia's fatal weakness? Imagine the roar of exploding shells, distant thunder echoing across the battlefield, shaking the ground like an angry heartbeat. Did you think Russia's mighty industrial heart was untouchable? Well, think again. On October 21, Ukraine unleashed a flurry of devastating strikes. But the knockout punch landed on the Bryansk chemical plant, a facility whispering secrets of Russia's war machine. Delving deeper into that stormy night, Ukraine wasn't just throwing one punch. It delivered a series of jabs, crippling Russia's energy lifelines. At least, that's the tale the silence is telling. Ukraine hasn't claimed credit yet. Russia hasn't breathed a word either, a telltale sign of a nation hiding its pain or burying its head in the sand, praying the fires fade unnoticed. Now, zoom back to the Bryansk plant, that cauldron of chemical chaos. Why did Ukraine wait nearly 4 years to strike it, when the war's explosions have been unrelenting? The truth hits harder than a missile. It hasn't waited. October 21 was just another chapter, not the first. On January 13, blasts shattered the key of independent reports. Russian media shrieked about aerial assaults damaging the plant. The Astra Telegram channel chimed in, confirming the chaos, speculating Ukraine wielded US-made AGM-88 HARM missiles, fitting, since permission came just months prior to bomb Russian soil. Russia barked about its defenses repelling the attackers. They tried, oh, how they tried. But failure struck again on October 21. Harms might not have finished the job last time, feeble in their fury. But as 2024 drew to a close, Storm Shadow missiles roared in, perhaps erasing the plant from the map forever. Ukraine craves the Bryansk plant's downfall, for its grip on Russia's attritional warfare. Yet, deeper motives swirl like toxic fumes. It's a message, a defiant shout to Russia. Hear the echo of tomahawks? For weeks before the strike, rumors buzzed. The U.S. pondered arming Ukraine with Tomahawk cruise missiles. Those would link a 1,500-mile leash, letting Ukraine slam deep into Russia's core. Moscow itself could crumble, oil refineries quake in terror. Will Russia dodge this lengthening shadow, or will the next missile pierce its pride? The air thickens with anticipation, every whistle of incoming fire a prophecy. As fires ravage another sanctuary, where will the next blow fall? And does Putin tremble, knowing Ukraine's vengeance multiplies? The war stench lingers, fuel and fear mingling in the blast zone. Engineers toil in the acrid haze, sweat beating like defeat. Repairs fail under Western sanctions, components stolen from distant sites, leaving others to rust. Ukraine strikes, again and again, turning Russia's strengths into smoldering ruins. Fuel shipments plunge. September's numbers plummet below 2020 levels. COVID nightmares resurrected, but now by Ukrainian drones. Russia sold 3.69 million barrels daily, colossal yet a 26% nosedive from last year. Empty tank cars gather dust, ships starve for cargo. Oil revenues tumble to $13.35 billion, down from August's peak, now the lowest since invasion. The International Energy Agency fingers Ukraine, blaming drone swarms for slashing 500,000 barrels daily. Fossil fuel income drops 4% month over month. 26% year over year. Maritime exports bleed 17%, bans on gasoline until year's end, diesel shackled. Ports and facilities scar under strikes, insurance premiums soar, risking voyages. The shadow fleet falters, discounts demanded by China and India. That $47.60 cap per barrel looms, executed by the UK and EU. Shipping costs climb, profits evaporate like mist in the fire. Ukraine's relentless march targets Russia's soul. 50% of refineries crippled. Euromaidan press proclaims the milestone. Drones and missiles claim half, shutting down supply chains. Remote sites endure, operational at reduced capacity. Putin scrambles fuel to the front, distances stretch, tensions mount. Domestically, shortages bite deep. What twisted fate awaits Russia next, as Ukraine's arsenal grows? Will new weapons ignite an inferno, or force a humiliating surrender? The grind wears on, battles rage, alliances shatter. Yet, feel the shift. Ukraine evolves from prey to predator. Russia's empire cracks, but Ukraine's path twists with peril. Amid the smoke, a question haunts: can one nation exhaust another's spirit, or will the cycle of destruction claim both? The world watches, heart-pounding, as empires collide in fire and shadow. What if the next strike ends it all? The air hums with uncertainty, distant sirens wailing like wounded beasts. Sweat-soaked commanders bark orders. The metallic tang of gunpowder coating every breath. Will Russia rebuild, or crumble under the weight? Stakes escalate, alliances fray. Ukraine presses, but is there a breaking point? Feel the earth tremble, the future hangs by a thread. And you, in the quiet of your screen, ponder, could this war redefine power forever? The next explosion might answer, if you dare to wait. Ukraine never relied on American missiles to send a thunderous message to Moscow. Instead, it unleashed its own devastating blow. Imagine the roar of engines slicing through the night sky, the acrid stench of smoke rising from shattered concrete, and the chilling realization that Russia's defenses are crumbling under relentless assault. Can you believe Ukraine just told the world Russia is no longer untouchable? With the Bryansk chemical plant reduced to rubble, Putin must be fuming at how vulnerable his empire truly is.
Picture this, for weeks, whispers of Tomahawk missiles had Russia on edge. These weapons would have extended Ukraine's reach to 1,500 miles deep into Russian territory. Moscow itself could have been in the crosshairs. And those oil refineries Ukraine has pummeled with drones? They might have been obliterated, not just scratched. But on October 13, rumors swirled that the United States could finally provide those game-changing cruise missiles to Ukraine. The anticipation built like a storm-gathering force. Yet, just days later, on October 17, news broke that Trump had pulled the plug during a White House meeting with President Zelensky. Why such a drastic turn? Zelensky left empty-handed, explaining that Trump feared escalation. The U.S. wanted talks with Putin, not more firepower. Plans for a summit in Hungary evaporated, cancelled by Trump, who called it a pointless charade. That flip-flop might reignite hope for Tomahawks in Ukraine. If threats weren't enough to lure Putin to negotiate, maybe the real deal would. But for now, Russia sees Ukraine standing tall without relying on Tomahawks. How does it feel to Putin, watching his chemical plants, ports, and refineries tremble under Ukrainian strikes? The ground shakes with each explosion, the air thick with the bitter scent of burning fuel. Ukraine's proven it doesn't need America's distant aid. Storm Shadow missiles, with their 180-mile range, are hitting targets in Russia that once seemed impervious. The Bryansk plant? Destroyed in a strike that screams revenge. Russia bombards Ukraine daily, and Zelensky's response echoes loud and clear. Ukraine can strike back harder than ever. Now, as engineers scramble amid wreckage, struggling to rebuild what Ukraine has torn apart, you have to wonder, will Putin blink first, or will Ukraine escalate next? The tension hangs in the air like gunpowder waiting for a spark. Imagine how a single strike can shatter the fragile mask of a dictator's bravado. Building on Ukraine's growing arsenal of long-range missiles from allies like the UK and France, which promise to shift the European strategic balance, the nation yearns for more hundreds of those precision weapons to elevate its deep strike capabilities. But what if the tides are turning faster than anyone imagines? Could this be the moment when Ukraine achieves unprecedented freedom in its attacks, leaving Russia exposed? Ukraine's thirst for advanced weaponry burns brighter now. Experts point out that allies like Britain and France might supply additional Storm Shadow missiles to fuel this ambition, or perhaps Ukraine will innovate and produce its own. Whatever path emerges, it signals an era of expanded liberty for Ukrainian missiles. A key breakthrough came on October 22, as United 24 media revealed. The United States has eased a critical restriction that once barred Ukraine from deploying long-range missiles reliant on American targeting data. This change sparked rumors following a daring Storm Shadow assault on Bryansk, a Russian region now scarred by the smoldering remains of a chemical plant, its acrid smoke choking the air, flames licking scorched earth with a relentless crackle. Yet, controversy swirls like toxic fog. Former President Trump dismisses the report as fake news, insisting the U.S. played no role in those missiles, wherever they originated or how Ukraine wields them. Is he speaking truth amid his shattered peace talks? The cancellation of the Hungary summit with Putin might fuel Trump's bitterness, nudging him toward loosening those chains. Perhaps October 21 marked the true lifting of restrictions, paving the way for Ukraine's relentless deep strikes. With those Ukrainian missiles now unleashed, what horrors await Russia? The Bryansk inferno could be just a prelude to more chaos. In the shadows, Vladimir Putin struts as a colossus, back straight, gaze piercing, mocking dissenters with icy disdain. He's the iron pillar of Russian power, promising riches and triumph, even dominance in the Ukraine war. But beneath that veneer festers a chilling reality. Paranoia grips him like a vice, transforming the leader into a recluse engulfed in fear. His life is a constant siege, every rustle in the wind a potential betrayal, every touch of fingers on keypad a wire leading to doom. How did a man so seemingly invincible descend into such isolation? The answer lies in a cascade of dark events, whispered deaths that hint at cracks in his fortress. Tension coils around him, ready to snap. The shocking revelation? Putin's facade is crumbling, not from external foes alone, but from the monsters within his own realm. RHE next deaths could unravel everything, exposing the emperor's naked terror. Will his paranoia drag Russia into ruin, or will he strike back with desperate fury? You'll shudder as we delve deeper into this unfolding nightmare. The acrid stench of burning refineries lingers, a tactile reminder of Ukraine's unyielding grip, and the distant roar of drone signals pension more devastation on the horizon. In the grip of the Ukraine war, Putin plays the role of an unchallenged ruler on the global stage. But peel back that mask of steel, and you'll find a tyrant haunted by shadows. His paranoia rages like an unquenchable fire, plunging him into a world of constant, bone-chilling dread, where every glance hides betrayal. Now imagine this chilling whisper echoing through the halls of power. What sinister fate is Putin weaving to silence those who stray too close? Picture Russia's elite trembling under the weight of unspoken threats, as mysterious ends claim one life after another. Do these shadows prove his fear has twisted into deadly action? On July 8, a gunshot shattered the silence of a Moscow park. Russia's former transport minister, Roman Starovoyt, was found slumped on the damp grass, a pistol gripped in his lifeless hand, the acrid scent of gunpowder lingering in the air like a grim warning. The wound to his head screamed suicide, a pistol resting beside him as if placed with eerie precision, the metallic chill of steel against skin still fresh in the morning dew. Starovoyt had been ousted from his post just hours earlier, dismissed by Putin himself in a storm of fury. Could this final act stem from despair? Russia gasped at the shock, but why? Because this gruesome scene wasn't an anomaly. Oh, how the wind howls with echoes of betrayal, as past meetings turn into tragic exits. Just days before, another high-profile figure tumbled into darkness. Andrei Badalov, vice president of Transneft, Russia's giant oil pipe empire, plunged from a high window in his apartment building. The thud of impact echoed through empty streets. Foreign Affairs reported back in September, detailing this horrible fall as yet another unexplained plunge from lofty heights. Here's the hair-raising twist: Badalov's accident fits a grim pattern that terrorizes Russia's corridors of power. Since Putin's invasion of Ukraine kicked off, a staggering 56 of Russia's top officials and tycoons have met untimely deaths, many under suspicious veils that reek of hidden hands. Windows become lethal drops, hearts fail in supposedly healthy men, suicides crop up like poisonous weeds in a frozen garden. The cries for answers grow louder, as each loss chips away at the facade of control. These tragedies are so rampant, they've birthed a chilling name, the Southern Russian Death Syndrome. The Atlantic magazine spotlighted it in December 2022. When the death toll among Russia's elite had climbed to the mid-20s. Picture the crunch of glass underfoot, the bitter cold of mid-air falls, suspicious heartbeats faltering in otherwise vibrant bodies. Disbelief turns to dread, as rumors swirl. Are these accidents, or orchestrated eliminations spurred by the Kremlin's unyielding grip? What unseen horrors is Putin inflicting to crush any flicker of dissent? And if these patterns point to curated fates, could Putin's paranoia be spilling blood to preserve his empire? The war rages on, but inside Russia, the air thickens with invisible threats. Fuel shortages bite deep after Ukraine's relentless drone strikes crippled half of the nation's refineries, shipments plummeting over 26% from last year, with maritime exports down 17% and revenues nosediving to their lowest since invasion. Putin, cornered in cracking, might be silencing voices through fear, or worse. Insurance premiums soar for risky tankers, squeezing Russia's shadow fleet profits, while distant refineries degrade under sanctions chokehold. Each delayed repair echoes the war's toll, but will Ukraine's next wave shatter more than fuel lines? The agony mounts, domestic fuel reserves dwindle, exports limp at $13.35 billion in September, a sharp $200 million slide from August. The scent of burning refineries wafts through the night, sirens wailing as engineers scramble against sabotage's roar. Russia scrambles to reroute parts, leaving vital sites to rust without touch, a slow erosion mirroring Putin's internal siege. You feel the grind, the rough texture of rationed diesel on calloused hands, the distant boom of strikes reverberating through bone. Less revenue means fewer troops fueled. Putin's machine sputtering under crush. Yet, the horror deepens. Imagine insurers hiking costs, forcing hunted bargains with buyers like China and India, discounts demanded at every turn. What dark legacy looms if Ukraine pushes further, and Putin's circle tightens with lethal force? Will the next death expose the Kremlin's darkest secret,
or is this just the eerie calm before the elite's ultimate purge? The heart pounds faster. Questioning, is Putin's terror the real weapon tearing Russia apart, even as refineries blaze outside? Stay tuned, for whispers of betrayal might reveal a tyrant unraveling in flames of his own making. Imagine the terror of waking up to the sudden drop of a body from a high-rise window in the dead of night, the screech of sirens piercing the silence, and the stench of fear lingering in the air. Did Vladimir Putin orchestrate the eerie southern Russian death syndrome, a web of unexplained fatalities that has claimed dozens of lives among Russia's elite? Picture this, officials plunging from balconies, heart-stopping for those who seemed invincible, all under the shadow of the Kremlin's throne. This epidemic of mysterious ends paints Putin as a puppet master, pulling strings in a deadly performance that mocks his image as an iron leader. How far will his paranoia spread to preserve power? As Ukraine's strikes rattle Russia's machinery of war, the real collapse might simmer within the halls of power itself. Remember, by August 2025, Ukraine had shattered half of Russia's refining might, leaving the nation gasping for fuel. Now, delve deeper into the internal horror show unfolding. In that fiery chapter, Ukraine's relentless drone barrages crippled Russia's oil empire, hitting 50% of its refineries and slashing exports by a staggering 26%. Fuel flows dwindled to levels unseen since the COVID-19 lockdown, revenues plummeting over $200 million in a single month. Russia scrambles to reroute parts under sanctions, but a new storm brews closer to home, one of silent assassins and hidden agendas. The term Southern Russian Death Syndrome isn't just a label, it's a grim umbrella for any untimely demise of a prominent Russian figure that screams foul play. Deaths by defenestration, car crashes, supposed heart failures in individuals who radiated health, the toll among the elite now tops 20, each case shrouded in suspicion. Could these tragedies be the Kremlin's cold calculations, possibly commanded by Putin himself? One accidental fall might be overlooked, two could raise eyebrows, but this epidemic has turned it into a twisted ritual. The cold concrete below, the shatter of glass echoing like a drumbeat of doom, the acrid smell of gasoline from a staged car wreck, each death a performance, a moral verdict on defying the Tsar. Like Tosca's legendary leap from the Castel Sant'Angelo, these plunges carry theatrical weight. Does Putin not see how these spectacles expose the fractures in his facade of invincibility? Tears in the fabric reveal a despot unhinged. As these eerie fatalities mounted to over 20 among Russia's upper echelons, inexplicable plunges from windows accumulated, alongside fabricated suicides and abrupt cardiac arrests in men purportedly at their peak fitness. This crescendo of odd demises triggered a chilling cycle, where even a whisper of dissent spells peril. Why does paranoia grip so fiercely in the wake of Ukraine's invasion? Opposition has morphed into the ultimate adversary, friendly allies who might whisper advice now live on the edge of elimination. Trust evaporates like mist in a blizzard. These ends strike without preamble, often in absurdly tragic forms, their secrecy enshrouded in darkness. Yet, Putin's ruthlessness shines through at times, naked and unapologetic. Recall the 2024 purge within Russia's Ministry of Defense, a hammer blow that felled Sergei Shoigu, relegating the once mighty general to a ceremonial shell as Security Council chairman. Shoigu fared better than the unseen fate awaiting his comrades. Picture the stern boardrooms of the defense ministry dissolving in chaos, loyalists whispering in corridors scented with stale vodka and conspiracy, hands shaking as arrest warrants flutter down. How many loyal servants vanished into the abyss after that command? The inevitable question looms, who falls next in Putin's house of cards, and will the toppling reveal the emperor's unraveling? Imagine the chilling sight of Russian officials, once untouchable, now trembling in silence as their leader's shadow looms larger. What if the man who conquered a nation is unraveling from within, haunted by friends turned foes? That's the terror gripping Putin's circle, where death hangs like a noose, unexplained and inevitable. Previously, we saw how Putin's purges target those who lined his pockets, from jail to mysterious demises, while he claims to fight graft with an iron fist. But corruption isn't Putin's true obsession. He embodies it himself. His real motive? Escaping the phantom of internal betrayal that could shatter his grip on power forever. By targeting former allies and enablers, he's weaving a web of dread, making paranoia his weapon. Everyone near him grows as fearful as he is, stepping lightly in echoing halls where whispers carry like secrets in the wind. Foreign Affairs paints this bleak picture. Even seasoned Russian elites shuddered at Starovoyt's end. No charges yet, but his death echoed a deliberate choice, vanishing over captivity. Did he jump, or was he pushed into the abyss? The air at his funeral hung heavy with incense and unspoken dread, as government figures dared to mourn. Were they risking everything by honoring a man Putin marked as a traitor? Or was this a genuine sorrow, proving Putin's intent to unite, not divide? These riddles plague officials, precisely the confusion Putin craves. They gnaw at minds in midnight ruminations, the creak of doors amplifying anxiety. Putin amplified the ambiguity himself. State outlets flashed news of a funeral wreath from him. A green light for attendance. But those reports vanished, erased like chalk on blackboards. Was it a ploy? A psychological trap to flush out disloyalty, sniffing out who might follow Starovoyt's path? Hard to say. Yet Starovoyt's fate hints at ties to the corruption Putin vows to erase. Colleagues implicated in schemes that bled funds dry. One plot funneled $250 million from a border fortification initiative, leaving defenses crumbling like rotted wood. The stench of rot lingers, as Putin tightens the screws. Will someone next feel the rough grip of accusation? Only time reveals the twisted game. In the last segment, we uncovered the shadowy ties of corruption lurking behind Starovoyt's demise. His colleagues were ensnared in wicked schemes, stealing millions from crucial border projects, hinting at a web of deceit that Putin vowed to eradicate. Now, imagine the chill of a winter wind whipping through Moscow's streets, the acrid scent of fear lingering in the air, as another minister's scandal unfolds amid the Ukraine chaos. Did Starovoyt's greed seal his fate in a game where betrayal costs more than rubles? The echoes of Ukraine's relentless strikes reverberate far beyond the battlefield, gripping Russia's heart in a vice of paranoia. Before the invasion, such embezzlement schemes were whispered norms, tolerated in the shadows of power. But now, as Putin scrambles for every kopeck to fuel his war machine, these acts sting like thorns in his iron fists. Could this twisted logic be more than strategy, a feverish obsession twisting reality into threats, where every slip, every hidden fund diverted from the front line, feels like a dagger aimed at Putin himself? The air grows thick with suspicion, the weight of unseen eyes pressing on Russia's elite, turning allies into ghosts of doubt. Nina Khrushcheva, a sharp professor from New York's New School, dissects Starovoyt's terror for the BBC. She whispers of prison shadows stretching for decades, family fortunes crumbling like dry leaves underfoot. No escape, she murmurs, evoking the ghostly suicide of Stalin's minister, Yenikidze, in 1937. A historical crack that sends shivers through today's icy reality. When parallels to that blood-soaked era creep into view, it freezes the soul. Does Putin's purge echo those screams, or is it a new nightmare hatching? Yet, the irony cuts deep, doesn't it? Purging threats siphons away advisors who could weave golden threads of wisdom or even share the corrupt spoils he claims to despise. Putin's warning hung in the March 2022 air, a thunderclap over NPR's reports. The Russian people will spit out scum and traitors like flies in their mouths, he snarled, targeting those aligned with the West. How humbling, to watch the mighty tremble under their own leader's gaze, but as Starovoyt's fall illuminates, loyalty is a fragile whisper, and Putin's fear might be the true weapon carving divisions deep within. What hidden alliances crumble next, as the invasion's cost draws blood closer to home? In the last part, we saw Vladimir Putin unleash fury on Russians who dared oppose his war, labeling them scum and traitors tied to the West, spitting them out like filthy flies in his mouth, a so-called cleansing meant to forge unity, but really a threat hanging over his own circle. Imagine a tyrant so consumed by grabbing Ukraine that he brands any threat to his dream as heresy, purging loyalists like their disposable garbage, humiliating them in the darkness of his paranoia, where fear coils like a serpent waiting to strike. Such a vital purge will harden our nation, knit us tighter, prepare us for threats, Putin proclaimed amid the applause. This declaration was an alarm bell, flashing red. Elites who felt untouchable, who believed Putin spared them, applause faded into dread. He broadcasted boldly, dissenters faced erasure. Did many Russians grasp the trap then? Putin's core identity fused with reclaiming Ukraine, so deeply that even a whisper against it doomed you to his purge list. Take those border officials guilty of stealing $250 million. Once, they'd have handed Putin a bribe share, escaping unscathed. Now, irons clamped on their wrists, cells swallowed them whole. Behold the metamorphosis. Russia's fabric, woven by Putin for over 2 decades, unraveled by his Ukraine fixation and spiraling suspicion. Ordinary folks harbor delusion, those victims won't touch me. They tread carefully, but their meekness stems from numb apathy and knee-jerk compliance to forces beyond control. Per foreign affairs? Russia's top brass grapple with dire peril. Bathed in Putin's manufactured terror, they grovel extra hard, yet tread on shifting sands that swallow stability. How does any elite spot the axe descending? Putin slices slow, like salami tactics, inching toward despised foes. But flip the view unexpectedly, this sly game mirrors Russia's probing of NATO, drones buzzing near the edge, jets intruding on borders, chipping away provocation-free, avoiding a storm response, revealing a dictator's patient maneuver for global dominance. The elite tremble, sense of sweat-drenched anxiety clinging to their suits, the chill of betrayal frosting every handshake, wondering, is my seat next to vanish into the void? And in this web of dread, will Putin's grip on Ukraine blind him to cracks back home? Or has he already set his salami blade in motion beyond borders? Imagine a leader so gripped by fear that he crafts identical worlds just to hide his shadow. What if one man's paranoia could unravel an empire from within? In a stunning revelation from a recent interview, we're diving deeper into Vladimir Putin's fortress of suspicion, where every detail screams isolation, and trust is a ghost long gone. Shocking, isn't it? Buckle up as we uncover habits that echo history's darkest tyrants, forcing you to question, how close is the breaking point? Picking up from those eerie tales of Putin's quirky defenses, like constructing mirrored spaces to outfox unseen enemies, let's peel back another layer of this chilling mindset. According to Joe Parkinson, the sharp-eyed head of the Wall Street Journal's Global Investigations Unit, speaking on Times Radio just days ago on October 22, these aren't mere quirks. They're survival tactics born from a lifetime under the spy's gaze. Picture this: conference halls replicated down to the last sharpened pencil, each one a perfect clone scattered across his lavish retreats. Why? Control, pure and simple. Everything must align with his vision, or his racing thoughts whisper of plots lurking in the corners. The air in those rooms feels heavy, sterile, like the sharp tang of fresh graphite mixed with unspoken dread. Parkinson's voice on the broadcast carries that weight, explaining how Putin's KGB roots color everything. He sees threats in every shadow, every unfamiliar face. Remember the pandemic isolation? That endless table stretching like a chasm between him and the world? It wasn't just caution. It was a descent. Parkinson suggests a slow spiral into solitude that stretched over years. Now, even his inner circle gets the cold shoulder. Top aides? They rarely know his exact whereabouts. The Kremlin, once his daily throne, gathers dust these days. Instead, he drifts between opulent presidential residences, each one a bubble of secrecy. Those duplicate rooms? They're no accident. As Parkinson revealed, drawing from U.S. intelligence whispers and their own deep dives, photos snapped there could fool anyone. Is he in the grand halls of one palace, or the quiet wings of another? The ambiguity shields him, turning his life into a puzzle no assassin can solve. And travel? Forget straightforward flights. Decoy aircraft roar into the skies, engines humming deceptively, scattering false trails across vast Russian expanses. The wind rushes past these ghost planes, carrying echoes of confusion, while the real journey slips through unnoticed. If this screams paranoia, what doesn't? But here's the twist that hits like ice water: it mirrors Joseph Stalin's final, fevered years with uncanny precision. Fast forward to the 1920s, when Stalin clawed his way to the top. His confidant? Nikolai Bukharin, a key ally in those turbulent times. Yet, as power solidified, loyalty cracked. By 1937, Bukharin faced arrest on trumped-up charges of conspiracy. The following year? Execution. Stalin, at 73 when he finally slipped away, had purged even his healers, doctors trembling at his outbursts, afraid to lay a hand on him.
Putin? He's the same age now.
And the parallels sting. What starts as caution morphs into a cage,
where yesterday's friend becomes tomorrow's foe.
As engineers scramble and shadows lengthen, one burning question lingers: will Putin's web of deceit hold, or snap under its own weight, dragging everything down? How devastated would you feel if your country's lifeline, its vast oil reserves, started vanishing before your eyes, choked by an enemy you once underestimated? That's the brutal humiliation Russia faces today, as Ukraine delivers blow after blow to its economic heart. Imagine the acrid stench of burning refineries mixing with the cold sweat of engine room fear. Ukraine has unleashed a storm, crippling 50% of Russia's refining power in a shocking reversal. Russia despised the mainland as invincible back in February 2022, when it invaded Ukraine. Pure hubris drove it, believing defense was pointless. Ukraine had no means to hit home. Long-range tools arrived later from the west, yet Ukraine grappled with limits on their use. Change ripped through the conflict after that invasion. Ukraine morphed into a relentless long-range beast, slamming Russia's fuel sources with merciless force. Those refineries? They transform raw crude into gasoline and diesel, hidden deep in Russia, untouchable, until now. Early strikes hit hard but isolated, allowing repairs. No deep scars remained. Russia bounced back each time, believing it could twist the knife sharper. Starting in 2024, Ukraine ramped up attacks on those oil hubs. Strategically placed, they fueled Russia's economy for years. Past assaults worked? Sure. But fixes kept them operational, erasing true damage. Not anymore. Since August 2025, Ukraine evolved, savage and precise. It doesn't strike once anymore. It hammers repeatedly, abandoning alibis for solitude. Forests of pipes lie shattered, offline for stretches, piling pain on Russia's veins. The monster's roar echoes across borders, shaking the land. Russia's leaders once bragged about impenetrable borders. Now, panic grips the air, thick like fog over frozen tundra. No isolation left. Strikes spread, crushing multiple sites, pulverizing the second half of 2025. Analysts whispered it couldn't happen. They were wrong. Behold the milestone that rocks empires. Ukraine slammed 50% of Russia's refining capacity, per Euromedin press on October 21. Long-range drones and missiles struck direct hits around half the refineries. Production halted. Shipping stopped. Engines sputter and die, unable to roar to life. In utopia, Ukraine could obliterate every last one. But reports say it's unlikely. The unseen half hides too far from drones, or hums at low output, unworthy of focus. Russia clings to some treasures. Distance torments, though. To fuel his war grind, Putin demands swift delivery. Inland, endless miles separate sources and fields. Strikes on near sites force fuel to detour afar. What arrives drips too late, stoking Putin's rage. Domestic blowback? Severe. Sanctions suffocate repairs. Parts vanish, a cruel drought. Reports say Russia reroutes components, robbing distant sites. Unhit refineries decay untouched. Ukraine feasts on this chaos, straining every link in the chain. Russia heals? Hopes flicker, then more strikes ignite. Engineers huddle in smoky tunnels, tools clanging uselessly. The grind wears them thin. Refineries erupt in flames, but the real storm brews inside Russia. The nation groans under pressure, borders fraying. Fuel dries up. But results eclipse ruined pipes. 3 disasters threaten collapse. Shipments nosedive first. Per Euromedin, September crude and refined rates match 2020 depths, when COVID shattered chains. Then, fear haunted. Now, Ukraine starves the beast. Russia exported 3.69 million barrels daily last September. Impressive? For oil-reliant nations, maybe. But back then, trenches overflowed with tankers. Rails hummed with motion. Now, they rattle empty. Exports limp, ghosts in the night. Revenue plunges. Oil giants wept once. Not now. Exports fell to $13.35 billion in September, Reuters reported October 14. Still massive? Sure. But down $200 million from August's skid. Dip steepened since July, knives twisting deeper. The International Energy Agency blames Ukraine's drone assaults. It credits 500,000 barrels daily lost, fueling shortages, slashing exports. Reuters echoes the verdict. Korea piles on, fossil revenues tumbled 4% month-over-month in September, 26% from last year. Worst drop since invasion. Fuel profits? Lowest ever, choking the bear. Can you fathom the defeat? This strategy starves Putin's wars, slashing funds for troops in gear. Reduced fuel cripples drives, leaving machines stalled in mud. Less strikes, fewer advances. Ukraine designed it to bleed Russia dry. Twist deeper? Maritime pain intensifies. Euromidden says seaborne refined oil exports dropped 17% in September, processing halts to blame. No surprise. September's end extended gasoline bans to year's close, diesel curbs tightened. Domestic hoarding strip trade, waves sighing empty. Explains the revenue rot. But port strikes add salt. Ukraine targets loading bays. Heightening risks. Insurers hike rates, voyages halt. Shadow tankers old, shrouded, seek elusive cover. Traders scramble for pricey options, deliveries drag. Every barrel's haul rises, groans under weight. Concerns mount for Russia. July's $47.60 cap clamps earning per barrel for sanctioned buyers. The shadow fleet sidesteps, selling to non-sanctioned like China, India. But buyers salivate at caps now $47.60, wielding levers for discounts. Russia complies, yet shipping swells cut profits thin. Discounts deny gains. Deliveries shrink, taxes soar. Russia teeters, options slimming. Ship near, or forfeit sales entirely? Decisions grind, like rusty gears in a failing engine. The once mighty exporter now begs foes for scraps. Humiliation burns hotter than any fire. Verdict looms. Ukraine's grace works. Russia expects more wrath. Expect fuel dwarves, economies tremble. With refineries crippled, what hidden torment waits for Putin next? Will Ukraine's fangs pierce Russia's final veil? Instead of folding under the weight of overwhelming odds, Ukraine stood firm. Defying expectations, Russian plans unraveled despite their massive army and arsenal. Now, as the summer onslaught unfolded, the Kremlin aimed for swift victory but encountered a stubborn truth that flipped the script entirely. Picture this shocking surprise: Russia poured tens of thousands of troops into the assault on Pokrovsk, only to clutch at dirt and debris in defeat. Why did their mighty machine sputter out against a smaller foe? Russia assembled a force destined for conquest. It mustered tens of thousands of soldiers, ready to crush the outnumbered Ukrainian defenders. The offensive followed a precise timetable. First, seize Pokrovsk. Then drive northeast to outflank the famed fortress belt, where Ukrainian outposts like Slavyansk and Konstantinivka still held. Kremlin leaders vowed brutal efficiency and lightning-fast wins. But chaos erupted instead. The Russian army stumbled, failing every key goal of the summer push. Especially near Pokrovsk. They tried everything. Soldiers snuck in as civilians. Launched wave after wave of swift teams. Artillery thundered from afar. Weapons rained down. Yet, all they claimed? Forgotten farms trailing mud. Scattered hamlets buried in rubble. Barren rows of trees whispering in the wind. Pokrovsk stayed Ukrainian. Its brave protectors clung to the ground. Their senses sharp, the sharp crack of gunfire. The acrid smoke of explosives.
The gritty clay under calloused boots. Defying the impossible. Against stacked adversaries. Turning frailty into legend. Moscow's offensive shattered for reasons deep and damning. The top culprit? A gaping hole in armor. This marked the first major push of the war, where Russia charged without tank backups. Spotty tanks emerged occasionally, festooned with absurd shields like loops of barbed wire. Improvised spikes glinting under drones to fend off kamikaze strikes. But overall, forces scrambled in bare-bones rigs. Motorcycles roaring unevenly. Jeeps bumping over paths. Golf carts rattling like toys. The route? Stark and brutal. Russia blinked first at invasion, boasting a colossal edge. Superior manpower. Cutting-edge gear. Endless stockpiles of armor, rockets, bombs. Tools of destruction. Yet war laughs at paper. Reality twists and bites. Twisting fate, Ukraine's clever tactics, built on scarcity, exposed Russia's arrogance. What if their profits plummet further, leaving the war machine gasping for fuel in the dead silence? As those cheap welds creak and snap under pressure, a darker revelation looms. Could this frenzied adaptation signal the end of their armored throne, forcing Putin to reveal his next desperate gamble? In our last segment, we uncovered how Russia's bold summer offensive in Pokrovsk crumbled under a massive armor shortage. Soldiers clung to desperate fixes, bolting barbed wire and spikes onto tanks to fend off relentless kamikaze drones. Yet, the front line shifted to ramshackle rides, motorcycles, jeeps, and even golf carts that left forces wildly exposed. Now, brace yourself. Have you ever pictured a modern war fought like a backyard chase, with buzzcuts zooming into slaughter? Russia did just that, turning tanks into museum relics. And the humiliation doesn't stop there, it's only getting worse for Putin's battered legions. Listen to the revving thunder of engines. Feel the rough jolt of makeshift armor clanging against your skin as barbed coils dig in. The acrid stench of exhaust from civilian jeeps mixes with the sharp tang of fierce sweat on leather gloves gripping handles. Ukraine's tactical genius turned Russia's armored pride into dust. Starting with the world's largest tank stockpiles, those steel behemoths vanished under a barrage of mines, missiles, and buzzing drones. Commanders squandered their assets like candy, racking up losses that spiraled out of control. Desperate, the Kremlin unearthed rusty Soviet relics, Cold War dinosaurs hauled from dark storage bunkers with creaks and groans echoing through dilapidated hangars. But in this high-tech inferno, where innovation claws like a wild beast, those relics buckled under kamikaze strikes. Eyes gleaming with mocking triumph, Ukrainian troops watched the old machines sputter and fail. Panicked commanders scrapped tanks entirely in most frontline sectors, even in Pokrovsk. Why risk annihilation for fleeting gains? Without that armored shield, infantry troops shuddered like leaves in a storm, their numbers meaningless against precision havoc. The irony burns. Russians amassed intimidating hordes in Pokrovsk, voices roaring in harsh chants, boots stamping the muddy earth. Yet, Ukraine's mind stood unyielding, a fortified wall of spikes and hidden fury. Drones pierced the air with whirring blades, deep strikes plunging 15.5 miles behind enemy lines. Sensory eyes scanned for heat signatures, the soft hum of propellers turning lethal as they locked on. Target acquired, the chilling beep of a lock-on signal. Then, explosions roared, flames licking at twisted metal, screams piercing the smoky haze. Flesh met fire in bursts of searing heat, the tactile horror of shrapnel biting into unprotected skin. Half of Russia's offensives withered before even reaching Pokrovsk's outskirts. Survivors hunched in trenches, hearts pounding to the unending drone swarm buzzing overhead like angry hornets. Huddled in rattling golf carts, troops felt every vibration, engines growling, tires slipping in muck that clung like regret. Smell the diesel fumes choking the air, taste the grit of dust swirling in your teeth. Questions hung heavy. How could a superpower be reduced to this, fleeing shadows cast by unseen predators? Ukraine's innovators humiliated the invaders, exposing Russia's core weakness. Troops pinned down, morale cracking under the psychological assault, sudden streaks of light. Then deafening bangs signaling more losses. The Kremlin blinked, but the tide refused to shift.
Twists lurked as drones evolved, probing deeper, eroding confidence. What if this abandonment of armor signaled Russia's darkest hour yet? Without steel guardians, could ground forces ever strike back, or would they disintegrate in the crossfire? The second issue loomed, ready to shatter what's left, fuel shortages crippling the war machine, leaving soldiers grasping at fumes. Imagine the roar of engines fueling a colossal struggle, where one side outsmarts with precision, while the other blunders in blind fury. Could Russia's raw power really crumble under Ukraine's clever plans? Picture the gritty scent of oil-stained earth mixing with the distant thunder of strikes, shockwaves that make you question everything about this war's fate. In this epic clash, Ukraine's grit shines through its clever defenses, turning the tide against an unstoppable force. Where did Russia go wrong in its relentless onslaught? Feel the tension in the air, heavy like the dust from collapsing structures. Ukraine grasped early on that survival meant outthinking, not outmuscling. It played a wise long game from invasion's first violent breath, knowing its troops were fewer, its stockpiles shallower. No head-on brawls for them, no, they picked fights wisely. And Paxis? A fortress in the Donbass fog, where Ukrainian warriors dug in deep. The feel of cold soil under boots, the echo of artillery's boom, they surrendered minor spots to lure Russia in, saving strength for battles that mattered most. Russia's hubris led it astray, scattering forces in a vain grab for every plot. Blistering heat of battles waged pointlessly, only to bleed resources dry. Twist, while Russia boasted endless armies, it overlooked Ukraine's hidden-edge alliances forging steel from afar. That shift exposed Russia's Achilles heel, making its brute might look laughably fragile. So, what's the true cost of Russia's arrogant sprawl? Watch as their bravado turns to chaos. Hear the screams of damaged machines. Smell the acrid haze of burning fuel. Is humiliation Russia's next defeat? Feel the sting of exposure, as World War echoes mock their errors. Unexpectedly, Ukraine's sacrifice of land became a snare, entangling the invaders' prized assets. Russia's path was different, opposite in craft. Swollen with recruits and arsenals, they charged like bulls blinded by red. Throwing bodies at hamlets, seizing crumbs, underscore complete conquest was their chant, no matter the carnage. The clamor of heavy artillery drowned their senses, the stench of gunpowder masking strategy's stench. Yet, each futile siege drained their vaunted might. Cliffhanger, if tactics alone could end wars, why is blood still seeping into the soil? What dark secret will break Russia's iron grip next, revealing cracks in its empire? The war's heartbeat pounds louder, hinting at fissures that might shatter it all. Paxis stands as proof, smart defiance halts foolish greed. In the end, this contrast defines the battlefield ballet. Ukraine dances lightly on strategy's edge, while Russia stomps ignorantly, bruising itself. Can cleverness outlast raw power forever? Touch the scarred ground, inhale the metallic tang of resilience. War's true winner hides in these unseen moves. And if Russia doesn't adapt soon, its downfall might be more humiliating than ever imagined. These strategies aren't just moves, they're lifelines in a storm of fire and fear. Ukraine's choices lit the way to survival, forcing Russia to confront its colossal blunders. The weight of missed opportunities presses hard, like earth on forgotten dreams. Reality bites, brilliant planning humiliates brute force every time. The ruins of the Dobrapilya offensive crumbled at once. Ukraine swiftly reclaimed the small villages Russia had seized. Isolated Russian groups lost their supply lines. Reinforcements couldn't reach them. Do you ever wonder what true desperation looks like in war? Picture this: soldiers, marked by armbands, charging into the fray with illnesses like HIV and hepatitis. Russia resorted to this brutal tactic near Pokrovsk by early September. Putin grew frantic, throwing everything into the grinder. Telegraphed reports exposed it. Chronically ill troops, set apart from the healthy ones. Former British Army Colonel Hamish de Breton Gordon called it a sign of absolute desperation. He warned that Putin believed he could wear Ukraine down, outlasting allies. Pokrovsk became the ultimate grinder. Imagine the grind. Flesh against steel. Blood soaking the earth. Smells of gunpowder and decay mixing in the air.
The expert added that Russia's army bleeds capability. Poor health, bad planning, and weak preparation kill as surely as any Western weapon. Prospects only darken. Now, Ukrainian troops hunt in the Volodymyrivka region. A clearing sweep across the Doppler-Pilier sector. Russia threw its last armor remnants into mechanized pushes. Assaults smashed against defenses. The area turned into a smoking graveyard. Twisted metal hulks. Fallen troops strewn like broken dolls. The sting of cold metal. The crunch of gravel under boots. Is this the breaking point for a tyrant? How much lower can he sink before the empire shatters? Ukrainian infantry stalk the fields. Their boots thud against the ground. Sweat beads on skin, sticky and salty. Reconnaissance and FPV drones buzz overhead. EFFPV feeds real-time eyes. Scanning. Hunting every survivor. Russia retreats, pieces strewn. But whispers grow of more horrors unleashed. Will Ukraine's relentless pursuit flip the script, exposing cracks that crumble Putin's iron grip? The shocking question hangs in the air: can Russia's panic-driven soldiers escape the doom of their own making, or are they doomed to fall like dominoes in a losing game? In the depths of the Donetsk sector, where failed assaults turned the land into a haunting graveyard, strewn with the twisted, smoking husks of destroyed vehicles and the lifeless forms of fallen Russians, Ukrainian infantry prowled relentlessly, guided by reconnaissance and FPV drones slicing through the air with mechanical whirs. Their scans revealed a grim tally: over 5,400 wounded Russians and roughly 124 captured as of now. Consolidation pressed on, with drones hunting stragglers and supply convoys, promising that these numbers would climb even higher. Ukrainian forces swept the ground for any flicker of life. They hunted down surviving Russians, some crouched in thorny bushes reeking of sweat and fear, others huddled in cold, damp basements echoing with distant explosions. Many Russians, still able to move on aching legs, fled in blind terror, not eastward to safety, but westward, deeper into danger. They barreled toward places like Nikolaevka, where more troops lay encircled, trapped like prey awaiting the slaughter. It was a scene of mindless chaos, rats scurrying in a maze with no exit, starved of ammunition, food, and hope, their breaths ragged and hearts pounding in the chest. Ukrainians countered with icy calm, their boots crunching over shattered earth, fingers steady on triggers. They tracked enemies with precision, eliminating threats one by one in moments heavy with the acrid stench of gunpowder. Day by day, progress unfolded deliberately. Ukrainian infantry reclaimed square miles, securing not only Mariupol but also Mayak. Commander-in-Chief Alexander Syrsky visited the front lines, his voice firm as he reported ongoing counter-sabotage and clearance operations to root out lingering Russian scouts and isolated units. He vowed relentless pursuit in a counter-offensive to drive Russians back from whence they came. Yet the numbers screamed Russia's humiliating defeat in the Pokrovsk sector. Since August 21, Ukraine neutralized nearly 14,000 Russian soldiers. That included more than 8,400 killed, and the toll kept rising, leaving Putin's forces reeling. Is this the turning point where Russia's front lines shatter completely? Stay tuned as the battlefield whispers secrets of more unseen horrors, lurking just beyond the horizon. As the Kremlin's iron grip tightened in 2024, shaking up the Ministry of Defense and banishing Sergei Shoigu to a powerless role as Security Council chair, Shoigu fared better than those beneath him who faced the abyss. Can you imagine the icy dread slithering down your spine, as Putin's shadow looms ever closer, turning supposed allies into victims in a web of whispered betrayals? Picture the cold clang of prison doors echoing through Russian halls, a scent of stale smoke clinging to uniforms once adorned in glory. Beneath Shoigu, his deputy Timur Ivanov vanished into a 13-year nightmare of incarceration, branded a corrupt traitor in one of the harshest sentences ever handed to a Russian official. Waves of arrests followed, mingled with eerie, unexplained demises of high-profile figures, a chilling tide where proximity to Putin seemed to invite peril. Is the tyrant merely guarding his flock, or has unchecked paranoia bound him in chains of his own fear, deeming any nearby soul a blade at his throat? Whispers in the snow-swept streets suggest a ruthless game: keep foes close, yet purge them when shadows lengthen. Yet Russia spins its yarn, insisting these purges cleanse a tainted regime of its rotten underbelly. Corruption?
A mere illusion, they claim, as Putin molds a pristine government from the chaos. But how hollow that rings in a land steeped in graft, where elites bask in ill-gotten wealth, and the leader himself stands accused at its pulsing heart. Back in January 2016, the BBC echoed the U.S. Treasury's damning indictment, Putin, the orchestrator of vices. Enriching cronies with state spoils while sidelining dissenters. Adam Subin, architect of sanctions, painted a vivid portrait. He's siphoning energy riches and contracts to loyalists, exiling the rest, a tapestry of pure corruption. And that net worth? Rumored to soar past $200 billion, dwarfing the official pittance of $140,000 annually from his presidential perch. It paints a grotesque picture. Those now rotting in cells or meeting grim fates might have been the very architects of his fortune, the silent enablers now cast into the void. Does this signal the end of Putin's reign, or merely the cracking of his gilded armor, a tyrant cornered, clutching at fading power as internal storms brew? Just as Ukraine's strikes ripple far beyond battlefields, echoing the tremors of a collapsing giant, could these purges herald the unraveling of an empire built on lies? The air thickens with tension, the ground unsteady beneath loyal feet. Stay tuned, for darker secrets lurk in the Kremlin's frozen silence. As Russia's forces crumbled before even reaching the outskirts of Pokrovsk, decimated by relentless drone swarms circling like vultures above, the battle's brutal reality sank in. Imagine the roar of propellers echoing through bloodied fields, the acrid stench of burning metal lingering in the air, and the hopeless stares of soldiers pinned down under that endless sky. Hundreds lay strewn across the earth, their weapons silenced by precision strikes. Surviving troops, battered and exposed, clutched at dirt soaked with sweat and despair, fingers trembling on triggers as the hum of drones grew deafening. But this was just the beginning. Did you know Ukraine's deep strikes turned the tide, obliterating 50% of Russia's refineries and slashing oil exports by over 26%? That's a blow that could starve Putin's war machine dry for years. Picture the summer air thick with tension, the distant boom of artillery like thunder rolling over wheat fields turned battlegrounds. Ukraine's strategy unfolded with icy calculation, not reckless abandon. They launched precision deep strikes, homing in on Russian high-value targets. Weapons like long-range drones, MQ-9 Reapers, and high-mobility artillery rocket systems unleashed havoc. HIMARS missiles screamed through the sky, striking where it hurt most. Supply depots exploded in fiery spectacles, fuel convoys erupted in balls of flame, command posts crumpled under relentless barrages. Each blast echoed a message: your lifeline is next. Remember that crisp morning back in February 2022? The scent of fresh snow masking the stench of impending doom. Boots crunching through frost as Russian tanks rumbled onward, confident no threat loomed from the mainland. Ukraine's arsenal back then was limited, the West's gifts shackled by restrictions. But now? Oh, how the tables have turned. These strikes didn't just disrupt, they dismantled Russia's core. Ammo dumps shattered, sending plumes of smoke choking the horizon, the rumble of collapsing structures vibrating through exhausted bones. Every destroyed fuel truck meant another delay, commanders scrambling in makeshift tents, the sharp sting of frustration in the air as maps were redrawn amid dust and chaos. Why did Ukraine succeed where others faltered? They hunted infrastructure like shadows in the night, identifying what fueled the Kremlin's juggernaut. Supplies to soldiers marching toward Pokrovsk dwindled. Vehicles that could have breached defenses became twisted wreckage. Artillery shells, meant to pierce Ukrainian lines, vanished in explosions. All vital elements for the fight evaporated. This precision bought time, forced improvisation, humiliated the reckless invaders who wasted lives on futile charges. Tactics clashed like opposing storms. Russia's brute force met Ukraine's elegant storm. In this dance of destruction, every strike amplified the agony, turning the war's script against its architect. So, as Ukrainian drones hover nearer, what desperate twist will Putin unleash to salvage his crumbling empire? Imagine the fury unleashed on Russia's vitals, where iron beasts roar to life, striking fear into the heart of an empire. Could Ukraine's relentless assaults finally choke the life from Putin's war machine? The air crackles with tension, the stench of burning fuel hanging heavy, a relentless heat that scars the land and humiliates a nation once invincible.
Ukraine's long-range warriors, fueled by Western steel, have pierced Russia's defenses at the Bryansk chemical plant. Those Storm Shadow missiles sliced through the sky, evading air defenses with ghostly precision. Now, in the aftermath, Ukraine assesses the carnage, its leaders poised like hunters after a kill. A chilling question hangs: will this blow shatter Russia's offensive forever? The reports flood in, raw and electric. On October 21, 2025, Ukraine's Air Force teamed with its ground troops, Navy, and defense units. This wasn't a random jab. It was a symphony of destruction, targeting the Bryansk factory with brutal coordination. The goal: cripple Russia's assault by stripping away its military lifelines, those vital ingredients that power its arsenal of death. Vivid images emerge from the smoke. The facility burns, its reactors shuddering under the impact. You can almost feel the ground tremble, hear the distant booms echoing as explosions ripple. The Cuban dependent highlights the plant's grim role. It churns out the basics: gunpowder, explosives that arm Russia's troops. But the real terror lurks in its production of rocket fuel components, the very essence feeding Russia's missiles raining down on Ukrainian soil. Ukraine's strike guts Russia's missile heart, one bite at a time. Fatigue spreads like a poison, weakening the beast's roar. Officials from Ukraine's general staff speak on Telegram, confirming the assault. A massive combined strike, they declare. Air-launched Storm Shadows breached defenses, scoring direct hits. The air fills with acrid fumes, the taste of victory sour yet sweet for Ukraine's forces. Defense systems, once vaunted, lie in ruins, humiliated by Ukrainian ingenuity. No longer safe, Russia's core industrial hubs tremble. The emotional tide swells, despair grips Moscow, while hope ignites in Kiev. But what twists await when Putin scrambles to repair? Will he suffer yet another blow, his empire cracking under unseen pressures? As engineers toil under the stars, sweat dripping, tools clanging in desperation, Ukraine watches, ready to strike again. The clock ticks. Will Russia withstand the humiliation, or crumble into chaos? The fog of war thickens. What unseen horrors lie ahead? Imagine the shock of a nation once untouchable, now crumbling under relentless blows to its lifeblood oil. In early 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine, confident its mainland was safe. Ukraine lacked the firepower back then. But Western weapons changed everything, with restrictions at first. By now, Ukraine wields long-range might, turning Russia's refineries into a battlefield. Fuel reserves are under siege, crippling a country built on oil and gas. Vladimir Putin's war has backfired horrifically, and recovery could take years. Have you ever imagined a superpower's fuel empire shattered by a determined neighbor? Ukraine's strikes on Russia's oil refineries aren't random hits, they're a calculated annihilation. 50% of refining capacity is already damaged, according to Euromidden Press on October 21. Long-range drones and missiles struck hard, halting shipments nationwide. The acrid scent of burning crude lingers in the air, sirens wailing as flames roar skyward. What if Russia's remaining refineries, far out of range, can't shoulder the load? Putin's war machine gasps for fuel, strained by every extra mile. Building on Ukraine's relentless assault, where half of Russia's refining power lies crippled, the export crisis deepens. Russia ships its oil near break-even or halts sales entirely, especially for gasoline and diesel. The consequences hit mariners and traders like a tidal wave. September saw a staggering 153 million barrels vanish from seaborne routes, costing $12 billion, Euromidden Press reports. Ports hum with empty holds, the salty breeze carrying echoes of lost fortunes. Insurers demand higher premiums, forcing risky compromises. Shadow fleet tankers creak under pressure, their hulls groaning on choppy waters. With the MQ-9 Reaper drones buzzing overhead, can Russia afford to play this high-stakes game? The anguish of delayed cargoes haunts every captain's gamble. What hidden vulnerability will Ukraine exploit next, leaving Putin's regime gasping? Fuel shortages cripple Ukraine's far-off enemy, sparking chaos at home. Domestic crises intensify as bans and limits starve Russia's own people. Third-party strikes and restrictions propagate fear. 3 more regions now ration gasoline, joining others since September, RBC Ukraine notes on October 21, drivers endure queues under glaring fluorescent lights, the stench of exhaust mixing with desperation.
Baikal network, fed by Rosneft and Gazprom, caps purchases at 20 liters of AI-92 gasoline per fill-up, barely a car's thirst.
Indefinite bans loom, supplies disrupted. Rosneft holds sway, yet its output falters. Can Putin's proud nation endure citizens' fury, the rumble of empty tanks signaling collapse? Sensory overload grips sweat on brows, honks piercing silence. What if economic veins sever completely, dooming the war?
Imagine the agonizing crunch of boots over frozen earth, the metallic tang of gunpowder in the air, lives extinguished like flickering candles in a merciless storm. What if I told you Russia's invasion of Ukraine was built on a strategy so reckless it's humiliating its own forces? Building on the previous insight, Russia dove into this conflict reassured by its colossal army, endless streams of new recruits pouring in monthly, and stockpiles of tanks, armor, and munitions.
It embraced a brute force approach from day one, surging ahead without mercy.
Now, let's peel back the layers of this relentless war.
It relentlessly unleashed waves of troops and machinery across every frontline stretch.
It hurled overwhelming force at the tiniest villages and narrowest strips of land. It demanded utter domination of Ukrainian soil, regardless of the staggering price. And oh, the cost. The Kremlin's leaders squandered resources grotesquely, particularly the lives entrusted to them. Soldiers were tossed into the grinder as mere sacrificial pawns, commanders coldly anticipating fresh replacements arriving soon after.
How can a nation treat its protectors like disposable tools?
The stench of sacrifice hangs heavy, the distant boom of artillery echoing through shattered dreams.
Because of this callous folly, Russia endured catastrophic casualties.
For mere pockets of scarred earth or bomb-pocked fields, thousands perished or returned forever altered. Recent analysis from The Economist paints a harrowing picture. Russia may have suffered between 984,000 and 1,438,000 casualties overall,
with as many as 480,000 soldiers lost to the void.
Ukraine grieved its own heartbreaking toll, yet estimates tell a stark tale: roughly 77,000 dead and another 77,800 vanished in action. Even if reality leans darker, projections whisper of 5 Russian deaths for every Ukrainian one.
Doesn't that chill you? Doesn't it expose the brutal asymmetry of their mindsets?
Russians, with abysmal tactics and utter contempt for humanity, let streams of their own bleed out, while Vladimir Putin coldly insisted each loss served the cause.
What twisted justification allows such hubris?
These are the architects who forged the path to their own undoing.
Yet, as the front lines shudder under volleys of drone strikes and missile fire, a tense question looms: will Russia's wasteful legacy finally fracture under its own weight, or is a vengeful reckoning on the horizon that could shatter this invasion's core? Imagine the agonizing wail of falling defense systems echoing across a battlefield scarred by relentless conflicts.
That's the grim reality for a fortress once invulnerable, now crumbling under onslaughts.
Russia's defenses have been decimated by Ukraine's mounting aggression. For years into this brutal war, the Kremlin's iron grip on air defenses has slipped.
They've lost over 1,200 units of vital anti-aircraft gear, as reported by Ukraine's Ministry of Finance.
The sharp sting of defeat hangs in the air, leaving soldiers scrambling.
Priorities shift desperately, protecting key sites while others lie exposed.
Yet, what if a single, unstoppable force turned the tide? Could this herald the end of Russia's unchallenged dominion? Feel the adrenaline surge with this revelation.
Picture the sleek missile slicing through the chill wind, its engine roaring like an unleashed beast. It nears the speed of sound, hugging the Earth's contours in a deadly embrace. Radar struggles to betray its path, sensors fail against its slow, cunning flight. As it nears its prey, it dives with precision. The broach penetrator pierces deep, followed by a thunderous explosion of high explosives. Smoke rises, acrid and choking, as concrete crumbles under the impact.
Hardened bunkers, ammunition depots, nothing withstands its fury.
The British Broadcasting Corporation praises its lethal prowess.
But Russia's prized asset, the Bryansk chemical plant? It lacked true armor plating. Vulnerable as a glass house in a storm. Was it destined to be easy prey from the start?
The stench of smoldering chemicals fills nostrils. A bitter reminder of breached security. Two flaws tarnish this weapon's glory. Its reach pales before Ukraine's vast drones. Each launch costs a whopping $1 million. Choices matter, Ukraine must select targets wisely. The crisp dawn of October 21 unveiled a masterstroke. Coordinated strikes ensured those missiles struck true. Russia's weary forces may have unwittingly aided the assault. Their overwhelmed lines failed to intercept. Yet, this pulls back the curtain on a larger nightmare. Fragments of ruptured defenses litter the ground, their oily residue staining boots. Ukraine hungers for escalation. Press whispers of a deep strike campaign unlike any seen. To achieve this, they need arsenals. Domestic efforts yield innovations like the Flamingo. Kiev Post touts its might and affordability, poised to shatter European balances. Allies must deliver more, though long-range options like Tomahawk remain scarce. Hudson Institute expert Brigham McCown urges hundreds of new projectiles to elevate the strategy. As engines hum in anticipation, what dark twists lie ahead? Will Russia's scattered remnants fracture further, or ignite a furious counterblast? The metallic taste of impending chaos lingers. As flames licked the sky from battered refineries and repair crews raced against time, Russia stood on shaky ground, strained by Ukraine's relentless offensive. Now, the repercussions of those refinery destroys loomed larger, unraveling a nation teetering toward chaos. Can you imagine the mighty bear reduced to scavenging for scraps, its energy empire crumbling under the weight of precision strikes? That's the raw humiliation facing Russia right now, a superpower gasping for fuel as Ukraine's weapons turn the tide. Feel the acrid smoke choking the air, the rumble of explosions echoing like distant thunder, and the slick heat of oil fires searing the earth, painting a picture of vulnerability that once seemed impossible. In this escalating conflict, Russia wrestles with three gaping wounds threatening to drag it into collapse. The first is the steep plunge in fuel shipments, hitting abyssal lows. Reports from Euromidden press reveal September shipment rates for crude and refined oil dipping to levels unseen since 2020. Remember that fateful year when the COVID-19 crisis shattered global chains, brutally hampering Russia's oil exports? Back then, an invisible terror bred the turmoil. Today, it's Ukraine's calculated blows that starve the flow, stripping Russia of its market clout. Yet, does this mean the taps run dry entirely? Far from it. Euromidden details show September sales of 3.69 million barrels daily, a staggering volume for any economy not tethered to black gold. But scratch beneath the surface, this masks a brutal 26% drop from last year's Russian norms. Picture abandoned rail terminals, once bustling with endless tank cars, now eerily silent, parched of the lifeblood they once carried. Fewer rail haulers, emptier tanks, and dwindling stock for export vessels speak volumes, naturally eroding Russia's export income. This scarcity directly slashes revenue from oil and fuel trades. By October 14, Reuters pegged September's combined exports at $13.35 billion, still a war chest, hinting Ukraine's mission remains incomplete to fully cripple Russia's energy giant. But compare that, a jarring $200 million shortfall from August's haul, with August itself plummeting after July's decline. The International Energy Agency, or IEA, credits Ukraine's long-range drone barrages for shredding crude processing by roughly 500,000 barrels daily, sparking homegrown shortages and slumping outreach. Reuters echoes this, amplifying the strain on a regime already buckling. As repairs falter and refineries smolder, what invisible chain reaction will finally break Russia's resolve, forcing Putin to admit defeat or unleash a desperate gamble? In a stunning reversal of fortunes, Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, banking on immunity for its homeland from Ukrainian blows. Back then, it seemed safe, no mainland threats loomed. Ukraine lacked the reach to strike deep, and even Western-supplied long-range arms came tethered by use restrictions. But tides have turned decisively. By 2024, Ukraine unleashed relentless drone and missile barrages on Russia's oil refineries, crippling half its refining might. Euromidden press spotlighted this October 21 shock. Direct strikes have silenced dozens, halting fuel shipments across the nation. Repairs falter under sanctions, forcing Russia to cannibalize parts, stressing far-flung facilities too. Fuel surges now traverse vast distances to the front lines, straining war efforts. Domestically, exports plummet. September saw a 26% drop to 3.69 million barrels daily, shades of pre-invasion lows. Revenues dived to $13.35 billion, the skimpiest since the war erupted, per Reuters.
Maritime outflows?
Down 17%, with bans on gasoline and diesel locking in until year's end. Ports and loaders face direct hits, spiking insurance premiums and shipment delays. The EU-UK $47.60 cap on crude sales binds Russian exports to sanctioning states, while shadow fleets skirt to buyers like China and India. Yet rising ship risks push costs skyward, compelling discounts that erode profits. Forget simple oil sales, Russia flirts with near-loss hauls or total abandonment.
Could one nation's grid topple an empire built on black gold? Imagine the roar of distant explosions.
The acrid stench of burning crude wafting over desolate plains. That's a flashback to February 24, 2022, the day Vladimir Putin's tanks crossed the border, flames licking the air as if to claim victory. Now, feel the harsh bite of late September chill, cracked soil underfoot where refineries once hummed with promise.
Why would Putin gamble his empire's heart on untouchable energy?
Shockingly, Ukraine's drone assaults have shredded Russia's refining soul, cutting production by 500,000 barrels a day per the International Energy Agency.
How does an oil giant scramble when fuel dwindles and ports quiver? This hits deeper than strikes alone, it's unraveling Russia's very fabric.
Picking up from refinery knife points crippling shipments, maritime trade shudder.
Seaborne fuel outflows fell 17% in September. Why such a jolt? Bans clamped on gasoline until 2025, diesel partially barred too. Russia hoards precious drops for home fronts, leaving global markets thirsty. This ripple explains ravaged revenues now. But bigger storms brew ahead.
Ukraine's war on energy expands. Strikes scar ports and loading docks, shadow fleet giants cringe.
Unreliable calls skyrocket premiums. Insurers hike costs, sidelining old tankers with foggy papers.
Traders chase pricey cover or downgrade to flimsy, state-insured vessels. Shipments drag, every barrel's haul balloons.
Euromidden press underscores the peril.
Concern mounts for Russia. In July, UK and EU capped crude at $47.60 per barrel for sanctioned buyers.
Shadow fleets? Their edge lets Russia peddle to unsanctioned like China, India.
These buyers drool over lower caps, wielding leverage for deeper slashes. Sellers must cave, discounts multiply.
Rising insurance eats margins, profits vanish. Russia inches toward break-even on barrels or dumps hopes entirely. What humiliation awaits a petropowerhouse bartering oil at a loss? Hear the distant thrum of engines fading, the salty tang of sea air sharpening as exports evaporate.
September alone lost 153 million barrels to seaborne routes, worth $12 billion, claims Euromidden.
The outlet frames it stark, domestic fixes bleed trade agony. Russia's outlet ban echoes, gasoline frozen, diesel curtailed.
Markets recoil, prices tumble, yet sanctions amplify the sting.
As Russia's lifeline phrase, what brutal twist leaves its war chariot sputtering on fumes?
The port siege isn't isolated. Ukraine's precision turns every voyage into a gamble, forcing Putin to bleed gold for survival.
Will his shadow fleets vanish into discounts, or does a deeper abyss yawn?
Previous part explored how Russia's reduced refining capacity forced it to extend its gasoline export ban until the end of 2025 and impose a partial diesel ban, prioritizing domestic fuel needs over trade.
Can you imagine the heart-pounding chaos as waves of unpaid bills crash over Moscow's energy giants, leaving Putin scrambling for scraps in his shadow fleet nightmare?
We're about to dive deep into Ukraine's relentless assault, multiplying Russia's agony, turning her proud refineries into smoldering ruins that echo with the rumble of forgotten victories.
Russia is clinging to its energy lifeline by choking off exports, saving precious fuel for home.
But that desperate tactic echoes a haunting flashback from 2020, the air thick with the sharp sting of isolation, the muffled hum of empty terminals, the chill of untouched oil pumps, the bitter taste of economic halt during a global slump born from unseen fears.
With refining down, Russia's ports feel the resonance of a nation in retreat, prices spiking as premiums for older tankers climb, because who buys oil from a sinking ship?
This chain reaction ripples through seaborne trade, slashing shipments and revenues, as Euromedin Press highlights. It's no shock, but the sharp decline in maritime fuel exports, down 17% in September, fuels domestic strains, or rationing whispers of scarcity. Why ship abroad when home tanks run dry? Russia's bigger trouble brews on the horizon. Ukraine isn't stopping at refineries. It rains strikes on ports and loading sites, crippling energy flow across the board. For maritime ops, these hits amp risk, demanding higher insurance premiums to safeguard voyages. When docks falter, ship routes turn unreliable. Insurers jack up rates, slashing coverage for dodgy shadow fleet vessels with spotty docks. Traders scramble for pricier, scarcer policies, or switch to rickety boats with thin state backing. Shipments drag, costs balloon per barrel, as Euromedin Press spells out. The rising freight bill for each drum gnaws at Russia's core. In July, UK and EU capped Russian crude at $47.60 per barrel for sanctioned buyers. That locks Russia's max earnings there. But buyers like China and India salivate at the leverage, craving cuts or bypassing deals entirely. Putin must cave, offering markdowns. Now, with freight fees surging from these port perils, those discounts erode profits to nothing. Russia ships near break-even, or abandons sales altogether. Feel the grime of black gold clinging to strained pipelines, the acrid smoke of burned-out ports, the distant roar of injured waves. Ukraine's gambit humiliates a once mighty regime, but what if newly unmanned strikes twist the war into a fuelless abyss? How low will Russia fall before Putin's empire crumbles under its own weight? In the last part, we saw Ukraine targeting Russia's war machine right at its core. The strike on the Bryansk chemical plant came hot on the heels of failed talks for Tomahawk missiles from the U.S. And it happened just hours after Newsweek reported that U.S. President Donald Trump's summit with Vladimir Putin in Hungary was scrapped. Ukraine unleashed Storm Shadow missiles in a massive assault. Ever wondered what happens when a nation turns the tables on its aggressor with surgical precision? Imagine the stench of explosives lingering in the air, like a brutal slap to a bully's face. Russia thought its mainland was safe, but Ukraine proved them wrong in spectacular fashion. On October 21, 2025, the strike began with coordinated fury. The Air Force of the Armed Forces of Ukraine teamed up with land forces, the Navy, and other units. They launched a massive combined missile and airstrike. Air-launched Storm Shadow missiles sliced through Russian defenses. They hit the Bryansk chemical plant with deadly accuracy, penetrating what little air defenses stood in the way. Direct hits rocked the facility, shaking the ground like thunder rolling through hell. Ukraine's officials are still assessing the damage at this video's creation. But initial reports paint a picture of devastation. Ukraine's general staff took to Telegram to confirm it. They stated the strike was real and our work. This wasn't random chaos. It was a calculated blow to cripple Russia's offensive. The plant produces essentials for war, gunpowder, explosives, and rocket fuel components. Ukraine just carved out a chunk of Russia's missile-making heart. Soldiers on the ground feel the burn already. Rocket fuel shortages could choke Putin's air raids. Imagine the roar of engines growing silent, echoing Russia's humiliation. As engineers scramble in the ruins, the smell of burning metal fills the air. Touch the scorched earth, feel the defeat seeping in. Is this the twist that Ukraine needed to dominate? Ukraine says the goal was simple: weaken Russia's war machine. And by hitting this facility, they struck gold. The Cuban Independent notes it manufactures key war materials. Fuels for missiles, propellants that propel doom. Now, those supplies are gone. The dust from explosions still hangs thick, tasting like defeat. Russia's soldiers might sense the shift: fewer munitions, slower assaults. But wait. Has Ukraine unleashed something even deadlier next? As Russia scrambles to rebuild, with sanctions biting deep, what dark secret lies in the aftermath? The tension mounts, like a storm waiting to erupt. Will their fortifications hold, or will Ukraine strike again, exposing cracks wider than ever? The pilot gripped the controls, his heart pounding as alarms blared. Engines roared, smoke thick and choking, but this time, it's Russia's turn to feel the burn. What if Ukraine's next move shatters everything you've believed? In the previous installment, we explored Russia's confident, brute force approach to the war, relying on its vast army, endless recruits, tanks, armor, and munitions to push forward relentlessly. They viewed losses as acceptable in their quest for total conquest, treating soldiers like disposable assets. Now, as the conflict drags on with staggering casualties, their strategy exposes a chilling reality. Can you imagine the deafening roar of artillery fire echoing across frozen battlefields, where the acrid stench of gunpowder hangs thick in the icy air, and the chilling sensation of wet mud clinging to boots signals yet another futile charge? Shockingly, Russia's reckless tactics have cost them vastly more than they ever bargained for, with an analytical report from The Economist estimating total casualties at a horrifying 984,000 to 1,438,000, and that's including those who never returned home. Ukraine, fighting with precision and care, has fared better despite enduring its own tragedies, revealing a brutal disparity. Their losses stand at around 77,000 deaths and 77,800 missing in action, even as the true toll might be higher. But crunch the numbers, and the humiliation hits hard. For every Ukrainian fatality, approximately 5 Russians have fallen. The question lingers: how did Putin's regime justify such sacrifice, dismissing lives as mere pawns in an endless game of conquest? And as winter's grip tightens, tightening supplies and morale, what unforeseen twist will shatter Russia's facade of invincibility? Will the next patrol uncover the cracks in their empire? Or will more soldiers vanish into the abyss? But this isn't just a tale of attrition, it's a symphony of waste amplified by Putin's callous rhetoric, where he once shrugged off deaths as necessary for a greater cause, sending shivers down spines with his icy detachment. Picture the tactile horror of soldiers trudging through snow-draped trenches, the bitter cold seeping into bones while commanders gamble lives on insignificant gains, a cratered hill or barren field that offers no strategic edge. The Russians' bold overkill, hurling waves of troops at tiny outposts, culminates in jaw-dropping inefficiencies, lives extinguished for trivial advancements. Could this be the turning point, where the weight of 480,000 estimated Russian deaths crushes their resolve, leaving Ukraine to pivot toward liberation? As rumors swirl of new alliances forming in the shadows, tension rises. Yet, amidst the chaos, Russia's habit of squandering resources shines a light on their desperation, contrasting sharply with Ukraine's measured defense. Vivid flashes of explosions pepper the night sky, the metallic tang of blood mixing with earthy mud underfoot, evoking the senseless brutality of marching men into slaughter, only for replacements to arrive days later. Their aggressive push for full domination disregards the human cost, turning soldiers into shadows on the frozen ground. That Economist report paints a grim canvas. Russia's upper casualty range hints at a collapse in command, while Ukraine's figures underscore resilience. Why did Putin dismiss these losses so flippantly, as if they were dominoes in his grand design? And what if this pattern breaks first, exposing a clandestine vulnerability that changes everything, perhaps a defection from within, brewing like a storm on the horizon? The war's heartbeat quickens with every assault, the crunch of boots on gravel a reminder of Russia's flawed script. They've unleashed torrents of manpower and hardware against meager targets, dreaming of swift victory but reaping only sprawl of bodies. Ukraine, cherishing its forces, stands defiant despite fewer but no less harrowing tragedies. Their estimated totals pale against Russia's avalanche, a ratio that humiliates strategists: 5 lives lost for 1. Will the next wave reveal oil-slicked trenches or deserted bunkers, signaling an end to this mad gamble? As unseen eyes watch from afar, the anticipation builds, poised on a knife's edge. In essence, Russia's brute approach, once a symbol of power, now echoes with empty promises, fissured by staggering losses that paint the Kremlin in shameful light. Ukrainian commanders, valuing lives over conquest, navigate the labyrinth with finesse, their path etched in contrast to Soviet recklessness. The crisp snap of distant gunfire lingers, mingled with the sour odor of despair, bodies strewn like forgotten relics on battlefield scrap heaps. Analytical insights reveal Russia's potential death toll reaching 480,000, dwarfing Ukraine's sacrifices, a stark illustration of divergent paths. Putin's chilling words last year ring hollow now, as the toll demands reckoning. Is this disparity the spark for a seismic upheaval, perhaps a covert operation that topples the regime? The air thickens with suspense, each passing moment a whisper of impending reckoning.
What's brewing in the Kremlin's chambers that could unravel everything, leaving the mighty exposed and fractured? As supplies dwindle and whispers of mutiny grow, the tension coils tighter, threatening to explode at the worst possible instant. In our last segment, we uncovered the brutal toll of Russia's push into Pokrovsk, with thousands of soldiers obliterated by Ukrainian drones and artillery.
Now, imagine the stench of gunpowder lingering in the air like a bitter fog, the rumble of explosions echoing through shattered landscapes, and the gritty feel of mud clinging to boots under relentless rain. Did you know Russia's so-called unbeatable Donbass offensive has left over 14,000 of its troops neutralized, including more than 8,400 killed? That's a staggering number that screams failure. But the humiliation doesn't stop there. Since August 21, Russian forces have suffered even deeper wounds, with 5,400 soldiers wounded and about 124 captured. As Ukraine's drones swoop through the skies, hunting stragglers and supply lines like silent predators, these grim figures are only climbing higher.
Russian commanders once dreamed of seizing Pokrovsk swiftly, with Putin boasting Donbass would fall before winter's chill.
Yet, as summer fades into memory and autumn's heavy rains drench the blood-soaked fields of Donetsk, Russia's stalled campaign remains a frozen nightmare.
Its troops huddle in trenches, while Ukrainian drones and artillery dominate the skies, turning survivors into frantic ghosts scrambling for life. How did Moscow's grand plans crumble into this quagmire of despair?
The answer lies in a web of miscalculations and unbreakable Ukrainian resolve. Feel the despair in the air, thick with the acrid smoke of defeat, and that's just the beginning of Russia's unraveling saga.
What hidden chaos lurks behind this frontline disaster? Stay tuned. Because the next blow could shatter everything Putin holds dear. In the last segment, we explored how the Storm Shadow's range let it strike from inside Ukraine.
Launched, it races near the speed of sound. The BBC notes it hugs the terrain. That low flight dodges air defenses effectively.
Hear the agonizing scream of falling defense systems. It echoes over battlefields torn by endless clashes.
A once impenetrable fortress now crumbles. Enemy might have shredded Russia's air shields. For years into this savage war, the Kremlin's tight control over skies has vanished. They've bled over 1,200 anti-aircraft pieces.
Ukraine's finance ministry confirmed it.
The sharp pain of loss stings like fire ants.
Troops scramble, guarding key spots while others gape open.
Priorities twist in panic. Protecting this, abandoning that.
Desperate gasps fill the smoky air. Yet, imagine one unstoppable beast flipping the script. Could it smash Russia's iron rule to pieces?
A solitary, unbeatable power. One that ends their unchallenged reign.
Feel the rush of dread and hope. A shocking question burns: what if Ukraine holds the key to Russia's crumbling empire?
Picture the sleek missile tearing through icy breezes.
Engine growls like a caged monster set free. It pushes toward sound's barrier, clinging to Earth's curves in lethal hold. Radar can't expose it.
Sensors blind to cunning low path. As it closes on its target, it plunges with savage accuracy.
The piercing rod drives deep. Then, a deafening blast of potent explosives. Smoke billows, sour and stifling.
It clogs lungs, tastes of burnt metal.
Concrete shatters, crumbles under brutal force. Fortified shelters. Ammo caches, none deflect its wrath.
The British Broadcasting Corporation lauds its killing edge.
Russia's prized Bryansk chemical plant? No real armor safeguarded it. Fragile as a glass lantern in a gale. Was it doomed to shatter easily?
The reek of charred chemicals assaults nostrils. Bitter, sharp warning of shattered walls.
2 weak spots sully this weapon's shine.
Range lags behind Ukraine's sprawling drones.
Launch price? A staggering $1 million each.
Choices weigh heavy.
Ukraine picks targets with care. Dawn broke sharp on October 21. Planned assaults made those missiles land true. Russia's exhausted lines?
They fumbled, overwhelmed.
Curtain unveils a deeper horror. Shattered defenses scatter, oily grime sticks to boots. Slick,
greasy feel underfoot. Ukraine craves more power. Whispers talk of bold deep strikes never witnessed. To pull this off, they need stockpiles. Local builds birth wonders like the flamingo. The Kiev Post hails its strength and low cost. Ready to disrupt European balances. Allies must ship more. Long range like Tomahawk stays rare. Hudson Institute expert Brigham McCown calls for hundreds of new shots. Elevate the game. Engines hum in eager wait. What murky turns loom? Will Russia's broken shards split wider? Or spark a raging comeback? Metallic chaos bites at tongues. A twist building like thunder. Building from there, the missile's fury exposed Russia's vulnerabilities. Bryansk's fall highlighted hidden cracks. Launch costs and range limits added hurdles. Whispers of escalation grew louder. Domestic innovations and ally demands now push Ukraine bolder. Yet, flaws gnaw at glory. That piercing rod and blast unleash terror. Smoke chokes, metals crack. Russia's shields fallen, pride wounded. A humiliating blow for Raven Vladimir Putin. Can they rebuild before more strikes hit? Shadows of chaos deepen. Troops' boots sink in oily muck. The reek lingers. International eyes watch. Brigham McCown urges flooding arsenals. Hundreds needed. Else, Ukraine's edge dulls. Unexpected twist, what if alliances shift, leaving factories idle? Will port fears rise, premiums soar? Metallic dread coats every breath. Dark waves crash ahead. Will Russia's remnants ignite revenge? Or collapse in silent ruin? The storm builds, unseen currents pulling. Picture this, a once mighty giant reduced to begging for fuel, its vast energy empire shattering like glass under Ukraine's precise blows. Is this the end of Russia's petrodominance, or just the beginning of its downfall? Feel the gritty soot coating your skin, the deafening roar of flames devouring cracked towers, and the oppressive heat radiating from burning reservoirs. It's a sensory assault that screams vulnerability for a superpower that swore it was untouchable. Ukraine's refinery assaults have left Russia in tatters. Engineers toil relentlessly, but the damage lingers. As refineries ignite and recovery stalls, the nation reels from internal crises. Outcomes from these strikes matter more than the hits themselves. Russia battles three critical blows that could shatter its core, pushing it toward ruin. The lead issue? Fuel shipments plummeting to record nadirs. Euromedin Press discloses September rates for crude and refined oil crashing to depths not seen since 2020, that grim year when the COVID-19 outbreak wrecked global networks, devastating Russia's exports. Then, an unseen threat bred havoc. Now, Ukraine's tactical strikes starve supply chains, eroding market dominance. Does this signal zero production? Absolutely not. Euromedin indicates September disbursements of 3.69 million barrels daily, a hefty amount for non-oil-reliant economies. Yet, probe deeper, it hides a ferocious 26% tumble from last year's Russian benchmarks. Envision deserted rail hubs, formerly alive with streaming tank carriages, now ghostly and barren. Trains haul scant loads. Reserves for overseas ships dwindle, which erodes export earnings directly. Shortages directly chop revenue from oil and fuel trades. By October 14, Reuters calculates September's total exports at $13.35 billion, a sizable sum, suggesting Ukraine's task isn't done to fully hobble Russia's oil juggernaut. Contrast that, an alarming $200 million dip from August's figures, with August already slumping after July's slide. The International Energy Agency, or IEA, attributes declines to Ukraine's far-reaching drone offensives, slashing crude processing by about 500,000 barrels daily. This sparks local deficits and shrinking sales. Reuters confirms this, intensifying strain on a faltering regime. Amid faltering fixes and blazing facilities, what hidden cascade will snap Russia's backbone, compelling Putin toward surrender, or a reckless roll of the dice? Can the deafening roar of explosions shatter a nation's grip on power forever?
Hear the villagers' screams, smell the acrid smoke rising from razed homes, a bitter reminder of the 13,883 Ukrainian civilians torn apart by Putin's endless airstrikes since the war ignited. Feel the icy grip of fear in those frozen moments, the ground trembling underfoot as missiles rain down. That anguish lit the fuse for Ukraine's vengeance, targeting facilities fueling Russia's war machine, like the Bryansk chemical plant. These attacks, a hallmark of Putin's tactics, sparked an unwavering cycle of retaliation. Now, with Zelensky's fiery words on October 19, just days before the Bryansk blow, echoing through his daily address, Ukrainian hearts soar. He spoke with Commander-in-Chief Alexander Sysky about long-range supremacy, vowing that each Russian civilian assault would meet eye-for-eye retribution, but pivoting the pain to Russia's war engine, not its people. Did you catch that sharp divergence? Ukraine spares innocence while crippling the beast. The Bryansk strike proves it, a thunderous lesson for Putin: no deed escapes righteous payback. What shadow looms next as Ukraine refines this lethal dance? Ukraine's long-range fury evolves, building on past precision hits to crush Russia's core. October 21 unveiled Ukraine's Storm Shadow Might, a missile storm that battered Bryansk mercilessly. These hybrids, forged in UK-France alliance and dubbed Scalp in French lands, stretch 155 miles with supersonic grace, hugging harsh terrain low to dodge defenses. Launched from Ukrainian skies, fighter jets daring close enough to unleash hell, these birds fly at near-sound speeds, their whisper a harbinger of doom. Imagine the pilot's sweat-drenched hands gripping controls, the engine's guttural rumble fading as the missile dives, evading radars in that deathly glide. Yet, as air defenses crack under relentless pressure and unforeseen danger brews, could Ukraine's own shadows turn against it, or will Russia falter further in this ironclad standoff? Picture the bitter chill of autumn winds carrying the stench of burning metal from Bryansk's ruins. 4 years ago, Russia's fortress felt unbreakable, its skies a steel dome. But Ukraine's aggression erodes that illusion, exposing cracks in the once mighty shield. Civilians' cries from Statista's grim tally, 13,883 lives erased, fuel Zelensky's resolve, transforming outrage into operational fire. His speech painted a picture, consultations with Sysky on capabilities turning every Russian blow into a mirrored counterstrike, honing in on enemies' vitals. The air feels charged, the horizon burning. What if this scorched land holds the key to breaking Putin utterly, or will the cycle spiral into mutual ruin? Here's the twist: Ukraine hijacks the momentum, spinning horror into hope. Their strike's not just vengeance but a calculated chokehold on Russia's pulse. But as refineries far away strain, whispers of imminent collapse grow louder, teasing a collapse that could redefine empires. Feel the tremor in the soil? Russia's under siege, and you sense the weight lifting, or the ground giving way? How does a tyrant topple when his own flames turn back on him? Stay tuned as defenses shatter. Will the next missile strike the final blow? In 2024's fire, Ukraine unleashed storm shadows across Russian borders, shifting from isolated jabs to sustained annihilation. No more hit and run, refineries faced barrage after barrage, crippling output in 2025's latter months. Now, a dizzying milestone: 50% of Russia's refining might snuffed out, per Euromedin Press's October 21 report. Drones and missiles pierced half the nation's fuel factories, halting shipments nationwide. Russia's turmoil deepens with sanctions starving repairs, components rerouted leave distant sites crumbling unchecked. Ukraine exploits this, prolonging pain through repeated assaults. Picture engineers' frantic shouts amid sparking wires, the reek of diesel mingling with burnt circuits as flames dance. Putin's grip weakens, shipments plunge to 2020 lows, revenues nosedive by 26%. The air hums with tension. Can Russia revive its slumbering beasts, or will this fuel famine ignite an internal firestorm? Feel the economy's icy fingers closing in, a slow suffocation that whispers of defeat. Maritime shadows lengthen Russia's crisis. Seaborne exports drop 17%, gasoline and diesel bans rising as refineries idle. Ports tremble under Ukrainian blows, insurance rates spiking for the shadow fleet's murky vessels. Traders face premiums, costs soaring for each barrel. Amid July's $47.60 cap, China's and India's gaze sharpens. They demand cuts, turning profits to loss as every shipment's toll rises. The sea's salt tang mixes with diesel fumes. Hulls groaning under stress. Russia's energy empire teeters. Will port strikes drown them entirely, or is a shipping resurrection brewing? Here's the shock: even untouched refineries degrade, fuel traveling farther in a desperate dance. Domestic shortages erupt, a homefront horror that erodes Putin's throne. What happens when a superpower starves its own legions? Cliffhanger: as Russia's coffers empty, soldiers' boots echo fainter, will Ukraine's next volley seal the oil kingdom's end? From autumn's haze, recall the first barrage in late 2024, missiles screaming in, refining hubs convulsing in chaos. The scent of charred earth lingered as workers clutched shovels, metal twisting like tortured sinews. But since August 2025, strategy sharpened, relentless waves on multiple fronts. Restarting sites got hammered anew, staying down longer. Russia's 500,000-barrel cutback, per International Energy Agency, bled exports dry. September's 3.69 million daily barrels marked a massive 26% dive from 2024. Revenues fell to $13.35 billion, a $200 million August drop. Fossil fuel slump deepened, lowest since 2020. Feel the earth vibrate with distant blasts? Ukraine humiliates the giant, twisting economic agony into battlefield famine. Less cash forbids troop surges, yet, will Russia's sanctions-battered ingenuity spark a humiliating comeback, or does humiliation fuel their frenzy? Rhetorical riddle: if Russia's refineries are 50% ashes, can it rise, or crumble under its own weight forever? In the shadows of unprecedented power, Ukraine has morphed into a formidable force, unleashing relentless assaults on Russia's lifeline. Once untouchable oil refineries now crumble under Ukrainian long-range drones and missiles, shattering the nation's fuel reserves and export dreams. Russia's mighty economy falters, its war machine sputtering as revenue plummets and domestic shortages bite hard. What was once a leviathan of energy dominance now reels from a war it ignited, its refineries aflame, echoing the thunderous roars of explosions that could cripple it for years to come. Recognizing the Ukraine-Russia conflict's brutal transformation, we shift to a fiercely personal chapter of retaliation. Building on Ukraine's staggering refinery triumphs, now crippling 50% of Russia's capacity, plunging exports by 26%, and forcing emergency bans on fuel shipments, we delve into the vengeful firestorm unleashed at Putin's doorstep. Just imagine the acrid smoke choking the skies as Ukrainian weapons howl through the air, targeting a chemical plant that once fueled horrors for Ukraine's civilians. How does a nation scarred by atrocities turn the tables so exquisitely, leaving Putin's regime in disarray? Shocking revelations await. A devastating strike at the Bryansk chemical facility speaks volumes. Ukraine no longer relies on distant American Tomahawk missiles to inflict ruin. The storm shadow, with its 180-mile reach, whispers death to vulnerable Russian targets, proving that precision outshines brute force. The blast radius? A scorched arsenal of chemical weapons lies dormant. Its fumes, a nauseating cocktail of sulfur and decay, silencing the screams that once echoed from Ukraine's bombed-out streets. But hold on, what if this isn't just about weapons? As Zelensky's voice crackles over Ukraine's airwaves on October 19, demanding accountability for Russia's barbarity, the true twist emerges: revenge, pure and calculated, ignites this counterattack. Hours after Putin's Trump summit fizzles, Russia rains terror from above, its aerial blitz on October 22, a hail of missiles crashing like thunder, claiming at least 7 lives in Ukraine's heartlands. Can you feel the ground tremble beneath your feet, debris scattering like shattered glass? Newsweek uncovers the heartbreak: 2 children among the slain, rubble burying survivors, 19 more injured in Kherson alone. The tactile agony of twisted metal and the metallic tang of blood-stained earth haunt every corner. And in Kharkiv? A kindergarten reduced to ruins, its innocence shattered, claiming a utility worker's life and wounding 7. Russia's so-called infrastructure targets are civilians, indiscriminately crushed, sowing fear like seeds of chaos. Yet Ukraine strikes? Surgical precision against war-enabling monsters, such as that Bryansk beast, where the air still reeks of chemical peril and the earth scorches under relentless heat. Statista's grim tally: 13,883 Ukrainian civilians obliterated by Russia's air assaults since the war's dawn, forces a stark question: could Zelensky's strike be the humiliation Putin deserves, proving that terror boomerangs tenfold? Twist alert: Russia's own precision equates to civilian slaughter,
while Ukraine's mission hones in on crippling the invaders' core. Climb into your boots, because the real fallout threatens to erupt next. As the body counts rise and Ukraine's skies darken with impending retribution, imagine if this cycle of vengeance spirals beyond control. Will Putin's next savage swipe unleash a typhoon of desperation, or is there a hidden fracture in Russia's iron fist waiting to shatter? The air hums with tension, the scent of explosives lingers, and the feel of impending doom presses close. Can Ukraine claw victory from this abyss, or is a cataclysmic betrayal buried beneath the surface? You'll never guess the brewing storm meets the final reckoning.